My wife suggested an open marriage. I caught her cheating, got tested for STDs, and filed for divorce. My wife, a 37-year-old woman, started a new job 4.5 months ago and made some new friends. I, a 36-year-old man, didn't like her new friends much. They were strong feminists, often seeing themselves as wounded persons and being very socially conscious. They were the kind of women who'd get upset whether you held the door open for them or didn't. It felt like a lose-lose situation. At first, I didn't take it seriously, but over the past 2 months, I noticed troubling changes in my wife's behavior. We've been married for 11 years and have 2 children, a 10-year-old girl and an 8-year-old boy. Things got progressively worse. She began accusing me of various things, like being inherently evil due to the historical oppression of women by men. It was absurd. I tried to stay patient, but these arguments often ended with me saying something like, "I haven't done anything wrong to you. The only thing I'm guilty of is loving you." It usually left her quiet, but the next day she'd start the same arguments with different points. Around 5 weeks ago, I had a strong gut feeling that something was seriously wrong. She started coming home late without letting me know, and I couldn't reach her on the phone. She would be distant and cold even when sober. The next day, she'd dismiss my concerns, accusing me of being controlling and reading too much into things. This happened a few times. I tried to check her phone but couldn't find concrete evidence, although I suspected she deleted many messages. I found a conversation with one of her new friends discussing the idea of an open relationship, which confirmed my suspicions of her cheating. My wife said she wanted to discuss this on the second Monday of December with the kids at their grandparents' for Christmas. We were supposed to join them later. So she brought up the topic over breakfast as if it were a sudden thought, asking about my thoughts on an open relationship. Fortunately, I was prepared. I'd been reading on Reddit and knew there was no saving this marriage. My best outcome was to protect myself and our children. From here on, it was about self-preservation and safeguarding the kids. I didn't raise my voice. I just asked direct questions. She'd been confident until she saw the seriousness on my face. Me, who is he? She, what do you mean? Me, don't play dumb. If you want to talk honestly, let's do it. If you can't be honest, what's the point? She, what do you mean? Me, if you lie, we can't have this conversation about our relationship. I can tell you're hiding something. So who's the guy you're involved with? She, I'm not. Me, don't lie. You've shattered my trust. Be honest or we divorce. No arguments, just divorce. Do you understand? She, I understand. She confessed to 2 one-night stands with married men and then revealed she planned to sleep with a colleague from work. She believed it was best for her, and I had no right to control her. I asked about the colleague and got his name and his wife's name. She claimed their relationship was open. She also suggested setting me up with her friends, one of whom was eager. I declined. I asked for her phone, which she showed me how to unlock. While she was in the bathroom, I locked myself in my office, which panicked her. I used recovery software to find deleted messages and installed a spy app online. When I came out, I gave her the phone and told her to leave. She argued, but I responded with single-word answers. She showed no remorse throughout this. She yelled that I was controlling, perpetuating the historical oppression of women, and not truly loving her. Her friends reassured her, saying I wouldn't go through with any threats. One of them shared a story of how she had manipulated her ex-husband using such accusations. I've ordered cameras for my house now. I know I need to record everything. I couldn't believe what I witnessed. I've never threatened her in any way. After that, she started messaging her affair partner to meet up, and they agreed to meet at a hotel, which left me shocked. I went online to find the AP's wife, and it didn't take long. I reached out to her on Facebook and shared all the details, including what was happening at the hotel. She thanked me and hung up. A few hours later, I received a video from her. She went to the motel and confronted them, yelling this wasn't the first time her husband had cheated, and she expressed her anger. She recorded my wife getting dressed on the bed, which made me feel sick. The AP's wife even slapped and cursed at my wife. I messaged my wife, telling her I had seen the video and never wanted her near me again. It seems she views our situation as some kind of competition where she believes she's winning. It's hard to understand. It's as if she's disconnected from reality and doesn't realize we're getting a divorce. I joined my wife's family WhatsApp group and informed them about our divorce due to her infidelity. I thanked them for welcoming me into the family and then left the group. I've received calls and messages from her, but I haven't read or responded to them. I just don't have the energy for it. I talked to my parents and shared everything with them. My father messaged my wife that she wouldn't be welcome for Christmas. I'm at my parents' place now and have spoken to my boss, who granted me time off until mid-January to sort things out. I've been monitoring my wife's conversation with her new friends, which have become increasingly frantic. I don't think it has fully dawned on her that she's lost her family and her new friends and the AP don't truly care about her. She has sent me numerous messages and even showed up at my parents' house, demanding to celebrate Christmas with us. My father threatened to call the police if she didn't leave. Now I'm searching for divorce lawyers and shedding tears. The pain hit me hard once. I arrived at my parents' house. It's all so confusing. Reading their chats and interacting with her brings me immense pain. I've only responded to her messages twice. It doesn't matter what you say. I don't know who you are. You are not my wife. My wife would never break my heart and soul while smiling. We're getting a divorce, and I don't care about your words or demands. You have no influence or right to ask anything of me. We're done. Her messages stopped after that last one. The pain is sometimes unbearable. I wish this never happened. I wish I could go back to how things were before, but I can't do that to myself. This is the worst Christmas ever. I couldn't help but explain to the kids that Mommy doesn't want to be part of the family anymore, and she wants to be with other men. We're getting a divorce, and they're naturally upset. Thankfully, my mom and dad are here to comfort them while I'm falling apart. I'll try to get back on my feet for the sake of my kids, but I'll never go back to her. I wish I had waited until after Christmas to get them into counseling. I blurted it out when they asked about when their mother would come. I could never forgive myself if I went back to her. The level of disrespect and heartlessness in her behavior is unforgivable. I'm lost and can't understand why she expects anything from me at this point. Is she mentally ill or something? I apologize for the rambling. I just needed to get this off my chest. What ultimately got to me was when my soon-to-be ex-wife used harsh language to describe how our marriage and particularly our children were a burden in her life. She claimed they held her back from being a successful woman who could reach her full potential. She also blamed me, her husband, for oppressing her and preventing her from having a good life. She even said that her family was the reason she didn't have a successful career and had missed out on casual experiences. It was too much for me to handle. For the next roughly 30 hours, I kept reading and rereading all the emails and chats we'd had. Upon reflection, I realized she didn't provide any specific examples of how we were supposedly burdens or oppressors. It was all broad statements without any supporting arguments or instances. In reality, I had never stopped her from pursuing anything. I financially supported almost everything, as her part-time job's minimum wage wouldn't cover much. I had also supported her hobbies, dreams, and aspirations, even when she took classes and quit them halfway through. I made sure to express my love for her daily and appreciate her contribution to the family. I'd take her out and be there for her whenever she needed me. If this is oppression, then I'd like to experience it, please. But I digress. At some point while reading, I just passed out. When I woke up, my 3 best friends were in the kitchen with my dad preparing dinner. I've known these guys since childhood. Let's call them Mike, Bob, and Frank. My dad had briefed them on the situation. I broke down again, and I was in a daze until Friday evening. Mike is a military veteran who lost his left arm below the elbow. We supported him during his recovery when his wife left him. Fortunately, they didn't have any children, and Mike later adopted 2 kids and found a wonderful girlfriend. He set up a Zoom call with his counselor who helped him during his recovery. His insights into my emotional state, even though he specialized in helping amputees, were incredibly helpful. He explained that a significant part of my identity and spiritual self was tied to my role as a husband, and now that part was dead. Similar to an amputee experiencing phantom pain in a missing limb, I would feel phantom pain from the dead part of my identity. We had extensive conversations, and I've been gradually improving since. Bob is an executive at a security company, but he's secretive about his job. I don't know what he does, but he's quite wealthy. Bob contacted a law firm connected to his company, and on Sunday morning, I talked to a lawyer I could never afford on my own. Bob, who had been bullied a lot in his youth, assured me not to worry about the legal bill. He would cover it. He was glad to finally repay me for standing up for him when he was bullied. Frank is a teacher at a private school and has 7 children. Yes, you read that right, 7. My kids adore him and his family. Frank has been ensuring my kids are well taken care of while I regain my footing and get everything in order. Yesterday was a very eventful day. It began with an early morning STD screening, which revealed that I had contracted chlamydia from my soon-to-be ex-wife. I'll need another screening in 6 months. My self-pity turned into pure anger upon learning this. I've decided it's time to go all out for full custody and to provide her with nothing if I can manage it. My lawyer managed to locate the ex-husband of my wife's feminist friend, who bragged about how she had deceived him. It turned out to be relatively easy through court documents. Talking to him on WhatsApp, he expressed his gratitude and shared the horrors he had endured because of this woman. Now I have a better idea of what to expect from my soon-to-be ex-wife. It was sickening to hear about the experiences he had been through. I'm now ready for a battle. After our conversation preparing for a legal war, I was deeply saddened by his story, as he had been homeless and hadn't seen his kids for 4 years due to his ex-wife's lies. I understand that I'm at a disadvantage as a man in the court system, so I'll ensure I have a mountain of evidence. My lawyer suggested a preemptive move with a restraining order, given her negative and aggressive comments about males in general. Especially for the sake of our son, growing up in a household with a parent openly hostile toward males is undeniably damaging, which is why I'm pursuing full custody. I've informed my lawyer to proceed, and she's expecting to serve the restraining order today. I had a Zoom call with my soon-to-be ex-wife. Keep in mind that she hasn't reached out to me or anyone since the argument at my dad's house. It's clear she doesn't care about any of us. The call was incredibly strange. She had dolled up with a revealing outfit, trying to look her absolute best. I haven't seen her make such an effort in years. Throughout our conversation, she attempted to provoke me into an argument, but I managed to stay composed. My lawyer had given me guidance on what to discuss. It's considered positive if both parties make an effort for an amicable divorce before going for a contested one. I was recording the conversation, and I even referred to her as my soon-to-be ex-wife, which she lived up to. She started with a bizarre statement about different types of male anatomy, discussing how they change when erect or not. I couldn't believe she began a conversation with such a topic. Then she mentioned her excitement about the end of current restrictions to explore this further in person. I responded by saying I wasn't interested in her hobbies and that I wanted to focus on our divorce. Her hostility became evident when I didn't react as she had hoped. At one point, she claimed to be going to the bathroom and muted herself. I observed as she discussed what to do with me with her friends, cursing me solely because I'm a man. Several times during the call, I had a strange feeling that she treated this as a game where she was in control and I had no choice but to go along with whatever she wanted. We made no progress on our divorce, so I concluded that we were heading for a contested divorce. By the way, I contracted chlamydia from you, and unlike you, I haven't been involved with anyone else. You should get yourself to a clinic, I said. She frowned at me, not believing my words. I have no idea what's going on with her, and at this point, I no longer care. I shared the recording with my lawyer, and she was quite surprised. Everyone thinks my wife's behavior is irrational, and perhaps it is. Since I own her phone and the subscription, I can use the chat logs in court. It's entirely legal for me to monitor my own device. After our call, there was a frantic discussion among her friends, but I no longer care about what they discuss. My lawyer is confident that we'll win this case unless there's something I haven't disclosed. So here we are. It still hurts, but I can see it as phantom pain. I've stopped feeling sorry for myself, and am now taking a proactive approach. No holds barred. I need to protect myself and my kids. I'm confident that my kids will be fine, and I'll ensure they get therapy as needed. My soon-to-be ex-wife will soon be a distant memory, and I'll start building a new and better life. Today I found out that she was aware of the chlamydia infection and received treatment but didn't inform me. It's quite frustrating. First and foremost, I'd like to thank everyone for their feedback. Some people see me as strong or somehow winning in this situation, but I can see that my anger shines through when I may seem defiant and confident. The truth is, I'm not. I wish this had never happened. I wish my family was still intact and I had a simple, comfortable life ahead with my wife. No one is a winner here. As the kids grow and begin their own lives, my wife's behavior has left me no choice, and there's no turning back at this point. I desperately wish this situation hadn't been necessary. I can never trust her again, and every night I cry myself to sleep, both for my own loss and the fact that my children will grow up in a broken home. It's also heartbreaking that my children no longer have a functional relationship with their mother. How do you answer a child's question like, "Why doesn't mommy want to see me anymore? Doesn't she love me?" If anyone has an answer, please let me know because I certainly don't. Every day I wake up and tell myself that my heart is already broken into so many pieces that it can't possibly break any further, only to be proven wrong daily. My wife still doesn't know that I can monitor her communications, or she doesn't care. She is 100% convinced that I will never leave her and that my reaction to her behavior is entirely unjustified. She continues to speak negatively about me, our marriage, and our children to her friends. I don't understand why she despises us so much. We haven't done any of the things she accuses us of doing to her friends. As I mentioned earlier, my lawyer obtained a temporary restraining order against her. There was a hearing yesterday morning, and since there were no new direct threats, it wasn't extended. My lawyer suggested using her knowingly infecting me with chlamydia as leverage to try to negotiate an uncontested divorce. I wish we could part ways through a reasonable process. I hate that I have to see her as an adversary and anticipate the worst possible outcome. If she wanted to leave me, I would have been able to accept it. Why is she pushing me into this highly adversarial process? Why does she seem determined to cause as much misuse as possible to the people who once cared about her? What could she possibly gain from all this? I would appreciate any insights into this, as it just doesn't make sense to me. If we end up in court, I might have to pay her a lump sum for our house's equity, but I probably won't be responsible for alimony since she doesn't show any interest in the kids. I'm hopeful about winning custody if it goes to court. My lawyer suggested we try to achieve an amicable divorce, and I agreed. We plan to meet with my soon-to-be ex-wife and her representative, hopefully this week. The ex-husband who was deceived by the dishonest person spent New Year's Eve with me and the kids. The injustice within the justice system against fathers is simply unbelievable. I no longer have any illusions about receiving a fair process if we go to court. His ex lied extensively, and the court took her word as fact without any evidence. He has barely seen his children since. He's been forced to pay unreasonable amounts of alimony and child support, which has taken a toll on him. He even considered ending his life. With the new evidence he received from me, he now has renewed hope. We both discussed it with my lawyer, and she recommended that he hold on to the evidence until the meeting with my wife and her counsel. If he takes action now, it will reveal that we have access to their communications. My lawyer's primary goal is to facilitate our divorce as quickly and smoothly as possible. Right now, I simply hope I can distance myself from my soon-to-be ex-wife. If she decides to fight, it could drag on for a long time, and it's causing me a lot of stress. I just need to break free. Unfortunately, the bizarre situation continues. The meeting with my lawyer and my soon-to-be ex-wife took place yesterday afternoon, but she arrived 30 minutes late. Surprisingly, she didn't bring a lawyer and insisted she didn't have or need one. Instead, she brought one of her new acquaintances. My lawyer had given me strict instructions on how to conduct myself, emphasizing that I should avoid negative reactions. If they addressed me, I was to respond non-confrontationally or positively if possible. When my lawyer placed her hands flat on the table, I had to remain silent. However, they arrived late without wearing masks, and the harpy attempted to insult and provoke me in various ways, followed by my soon-to-be ex-wife joining in. My lawyer tried to steer the conversation towards our divorce, but they continued with their jokes and laughter, often aimed at me. It was cringe-worthy to witness. It's clear now that my wife still believes this is all a ploy, thinking there's no way I can divorce her. In her mind, only she can initiate a divorce, and she assumes she'll get everything she wants. I was left wondering what on earth was happening. I refrained from saying anything substantial and only responded a few times with non-committal statements like, "Yes, you're probably right," or "I really don't know." Finally, they seemed to lose their steam. My lawyer presented the proposed settlement for an amicable divorce, mentioning my willingness to be generous for a quick and peaceful resolution, including a substantial lump sum for equity in the house and investments. My soon-to-be ex-wife couldn't contain her excitement, and her harpy friend encouraged her. They were eager to sign immediately. My lawyer, on the other hand, repeatedly suggested going over the rest of the agreement, but my soon-to-be ex-wife was adamant about signing right away, even discussing when she'd receive the money and their plans for the pub. My lawyer made a call and a notary arrived asking for our identification documents. We signed 2 copies and the notary stamped them. My lawyer, almost figuratively standing on her head with excitement, thanked my soon-to-be ex-wife and her friend and informed them that we were done. They left, and my wife even forgot her copy of the agreement on the table. My lawyer signaled with flat hands not to say anything while they were in the building. Once we saw them leaving the parking lot, my lawyer congratulated me. She went on to describe how this had been the most peculiar session she had ever experienced for a negotiated divorce. She explained that my soon-to-be ex-wife's copy of the agreement would be sent to her after we had a hearing in front of the judge, or if she hired a lawyer who requested it. Until then, it would remain forgotten in my lawyer's drawer. So, it seems on the surface that my divorce will be less challenging than initially anticipated. However, my soon-to-be ex-wife can still retain legal representation and contest it. My lawyer assured me she would do her best to expedite a hearing with a judge. It would likely be a video call. I also hired a private investigator after receiving advice on Reddit. He provided photos of my wife kissing 2 different men at different bars and going to a hotel with one of them. I have accumulated substantial evidence, and I hope it will suffice if needed. My wife signed to grant me full custody with a one-time payment and no spousal support. I just need to figure out the finances. I have a plan, and Bob offered to fund the entire amount if necessary. My lawyer advised me to keep a low profile, continue paying for everything as usual, and avoid stirring the pot in any way. I'm advised not to communicate with anyone we both know, and to remain patient until the hearing. Yesterday was the hearing, and I'm essentially divorced. It will take 4 to 6 months for the paperwork to be officially processed, but the outcome is unlikely to change at this point. The only option for a reversal would be if both my wife and I decided to halt the process. I'm utterly exhausted and haven't slept in days. Please forgive me if I seem a bit scattered. I need to get this off my chest. Maybe I can finally get some sleep after sharing it. My exceptional lawyer secured an early hearing just 12 days after we filed the paperwork, probably by pulling some strings. But let me stay focused on the recent events from the weekend up until today. It's been chaos. On Friday morning, a group of police officers arrived at my doorstep with a search warrant for my house. I was bewildered and concerned for the kids, so I asked if I could take them outside while they conducted their search, which they agreed to. They didn't provide many details, but I managed to obtain a copy of the warrant. I was quite shaken and couldn't make much sense of it. It appears that the suspicions about my ex-wife's behavior being medication-related are partially correct. The police officers ended up ransacking my house. I contacted my lawyer and she spoke to them, but since the warrant was valid, there was little we could do. It didn't occur to me then, but now. I have surveillance cameras installed everywhere to protect against potential false accusations. I have video and audio recordings of everything. If I choose to, I might be able to file a claim later. However, I'm not sure if I have the energy or willingness to do so. Perhaps I'll put it behind me and move on. I didn't know at the time, but my ex and her 3 friends drove my car while intoxicated and crashed into a house at high speed. They were all arrested, all found to be intoxicated, and they had various medications in and on their bodies. They suffered injuries in the crash, with the passenger in critical condition, and there are doubts about her survival. The lead friend, whom I'll call Henrietta, is the one who bragged about deceiving her ex-husband, Jack. Jack and I have become good friends, and I'll get back to him. Fortunately, the police didn't find anything during their search. I provided a statement indicating that my ex no longer resides at my house. She lives with her parents. I'm uncertain about her current activities. No, I didn't give Henrietta permission to use my car. Upon returning to my house, I broke down. It was utterly devastated and in disarray. It was the final straw. The only thought that crossed my mind was to call my dad, who brought me and the kids to stay with my mom. My dad rallied a group of 26 friends and family members who cleaned and repaired my entire house while I sat on the back porch, emotionally drained, consuming my mom's comforting food. They restored everything from every room to clothes, dishes, furniture, even addressing minor issues like loose door handles. It's now the cleanest it has ever been. They went above and beyond for me, and I'm not sure how I can ever repay their kindness. Over the weekend, I shifted from despair to feeling much better thanks to them. The cops discovered more medication at Henrietta's house, where her boyfriend wasn't present. There was no babysitter either, just the kids left unattended. Child Protective Services CPS intervened, and Jack won temporary emergency custody on Saturday. He presented chat logs to the judge, along with evidence of abandonment and an excessive amount of medications, leading to him gaining custody without much difficulty. Jack is ecstatic. He had seen very little of his children over the past 5 years. He had been raising funds to fight Henrietta in court when this situation unfolded. To make the custody permanent, he still has to go through a court process, but the children are in good hands at this point. Many believe that Henrietta will face significant jail time if her critically injured friend doesn't survive. Afterward, Jack plans to pursue child support and compensation for Henrietta's actions. Although he isn't overly optimistic about the latter, he mainly wants to be with his kids and ensure they have a good life, as it's evident that Henrietta has been negligent in caring for them. Bob has been supportive and found a rental apartment for Jack through a friend. I've realized that I know very little about Bob's personal and professional life, and I intend to rectify that. But let me get back on track. Henrietta was driving when they veered off the road and crashed into a house. They were all injured, and search warrants for drink and medication were issued for everyone in the vehicle. My ex is still registered at my house, and on Sunday I decided that I'm selling the house and moving away as soon as possible. I fear a similar incident could occur again. Last Sunday, her parents called me. They told me that their house was searched as well. They had visited their daughter in jail on Saturday, and they no longer trust anything she tells them. To cut a long story short, they came over to talk on Sunday, and it turns out she has been lying to them about everything. She has been going out to party and cheating on me, despite telling her parents that she was staying with me to work things out. Her parents were unaware of what was really happening, thinking her cheating was just a one-time mistake. That's pretty much what she told them. On Monday, my wife called me to ask for bail money, which was $155,000. Her parents had already refused to help. After consulting with my lawyer, she drew up an agreement that the bail amount would be deducted from the final settlement, with her mother as the custodian of the remaining money. My lawyer wanted to ensure my wife had no excuse for missing the court hearing, so my ex didn't have much choice and signed the agreement. She was released on Monday afternoon. According to her parents, she didn't comply with their conditions for her to continue living with them, which included stopping medication, committing to rehab, being open about her activities and dropping her bad friends. She apparently left their house on Tuesday to stay with some new friends. She also missed the court hearing, and I was awarded full custody. The settlement was based on our agreement and was completed in just 30 minutes. It'll take 4 to 6 months for all the paperwork to be processed, but in reality, it's a done deal. There's not much that can be done to change it now. Let's fast forward to today. I couldn't sleep. Everyone congratulated me as if I had won a major victory, but it doesn't feel that way at all. I still love my wife, even though I know our relationship is over. She used to be my best friend and soulmate until recently. Even though my love for her has been severely damaged, it's still there, and it hurts. A lot. There are no winners here. I lose, my wife loses, and my kids lose. It's hard to find the right words. It's like being asked to celebrate after losing both of my legs. People congratulate me as if I've saved half a kneecap while losing both legs. So, I can't sleep, and when I do, I'm plagued by terrible nightmares that wake me up covered in sweat. I'm venting a bit here, apologies for that. Anyway, today I got a call from the hospital that my wife is hospitalized. I'm still her emergency contact, and she's still on my health insurance. There was an incident, and she lost some teeth, broke her jaw, and will need to stay under observation for a few days. I brought her parents to the hospital, and it turns out some of her new friends had severely beaten her up. The reason was that they believed my wife had shared chat logs from her phone with a guy named Jack, exposing their actions. They assumed she had given the logs to Jack, which led to the beating. She still doesn't realize that I can monitor her phone. I'll continue supporting her financially until I have the legal papers in my hand. I just can't believe it until I see it. Right now, she has nothing. She asked if she could move back home, but I firmly said no. Her mother won't give her a penny unless she gets clean and stays clean for at least a year. They offered her a place to live under strict conditions, and if she doesn't accept, I don't see how she'll manage. For the first time, I saw a hint of regret in her since this all began, but I doubt it's genuine. She hardly looked me in the eye during our meeting. It pained me to see her like this, and I felt the urge to protect her. But she's an adult. Her behavior is dangerous, and I need to protect my kids. She didn't ask about the court hearing or her injured friend's condition. She seemed annoyed and disconnected. I still can't understand her actions. She has lost everything, destroyed her family, and caused pain for many people, all for a fleeting high in casual closeness. I'll maintain no contact with her until she's been clean for a substantial period. I can't handle all this chaos. I'm feeling somewhat depressed and extremely tired. I hardly get any sleep, and when I do, I'm plagued by nightmares. The good news is that the kids are doing better. My dad has been a huge help, and I can't imagine what I'd do without him. We went to his cabin this weekend for some skiing with the kids. It was a great break. I have minimal contact with my ex. I did have a conversation with one of her friends, the one who was in critical condition. She's awake now but in bad shape. Her nurse told me that no one had visited her during her stay. Her family even refused to see her when contacted. I'm concerned that the people who attacked my ex might come after me and the kids, so I asked the nurse if I could speak to her, and she agreed. I know I probably shouldn't, but I felt the need to ask her about what had happened since my wife got involved with them. She started by asking if I wanted a closeness favor for $120, which was quite awkward. I offered her $150 in exchange for information. My wife's new friends are all heavy medicament users. Henrietta convinced my wife to try medicaments and party with them, selling closeness favors to fund their weakness. Henrietta was the ringleader in this group. They preach feminist ideals, but as she put it, it's all a facade to protect their egos. In reality, they're selling themselves for medicament money. My wife got caught up in this lifestyle and soon started selling closeness to support her own medicament habit. It's tough to hear that the person I loved had turned to this to feed her weakness. It explains why money seemed to be her top priority. Now, based on what she's told me, it's mostly meth that she's using. Nobody visited her because she has stolen, cheated, mistreated, and lied to everyone in her life, so nobody wants anything to do with her. She told me without any hesitation how sad she was to have survived. She has no hope for the future, and she looks extremely unhealthy without her makeup. It was painful, and I was devastated just listening to her. I cried a lot for the sake of my wife. I'm not making excuses for her. She chose to get involved in this damaging stuff, and now she'll have to face the consequences. I'll get back to the details about the guys who assaulted my ex-wife later. Henrietta is facing a list of charges, including making threats, resisting arrest, possessing medicaments, engaging in prostitution, trafficking medicaments, neglect, driving under the influence, causing property damage, and stealing a vehicle. She's been denied bail due to the risk of her fleeing, and it's likely that she'll be in legal trouble for a while, at least I hope so. Before I continue, I want to express my gratitude to those of you who shared your experiences dealing with dependency. Many of you warned me that my ex might attempt self-misuse now that things are closing in on her, and you were right. She tried to intentionally overdose. I had discussed this possibility with her father, so we decided to keep a close watch on her. Fortunately, she still doesn't know that I've real-time access to her phone. While we were at the cabin on Saturday, I received a message from her that sounded like a pass-away note. She talked about her weakness, prostitution, letting everyone down, and how she felt like she had no other choice. I immediately called her father, and since I could monitor her location, he rushed out to find her unconscious on a park bench. She was taken to the hospital and treated. She was also severely hypothermic. I hate to think about what might have happened if he had arrived just a bit later. She's now on methadone. Her father has been appointed as her legal guardian. She can't object to treatment anymore. Her father had her forcibly admitted to a rehab center, and she will undergo a sedated detox. I'm not sure when, but probably this week. Her father's appointment is not solely due to her overdose, but because she abandoned her children, which apparently indicates she's not thinking rationally as she tries to end her life. That's the legal reasoning. Thankfully, I haven't canceled her life insurance yet, so she will receive treatment. I've offered to help with the financial side as long as my ex isn't aware that it's coming from me. I've been concerned that the men who assaulted my wife might come after me and the kids. Remember that Jack presented chat logs in court, which they believed my wife had given him. I talked to Jack about this, and he decided to take care of it since he benefited from the disclosure. I don't know if I mentioned this before, but Jack is a big, imposing guy. He went to the guy's apartment, which was a real dump, by the way. He confronted them and told them that Henrietta had provided him with the chat logs, and since they had misused someone he knew, they had a choice to make: go to the police and confess everything about the assault or face the consequences right there, which would involve some painful and permanent injuries if they chose the second option. As he described it to me, he made it clear that he hoped they would go with the first choice. They apparently wasted no time heading to the police. Needless to say, I no longer worry about them. I found a new apartment, and I'll be moving soon. Once again, Bob came through for me. All in all, I'm very downcast. This situation weighs heavily on my mind. What keeps me going is the support of my friends and family, and I know I need to stay strong for the kids. My heart aches for my ex despite everything. I don't regret marrying her. I still love her, but I realize we can never be together again. She's not the person she used to be, and there's too much pain between us. Despite all the recent hardships, we had a good life before that. I wouldn't have my children if it weren't for her, and I wouldn't trade them for anything. I know the pain will linger for a long time. Strangely enough, the news of my wife's weakness has made it easier for my kids to understand. It's simpler to explain that mommy is sick, and it will take time for her to get better. She still loves them, and so on. Right now, I'm feeling sad and tired. Jack is here with his kids, and we're going to watch Madagascar 3. I think I'm trying to create as many positive memories as possible. Jack is doing the same, and his kids, along with mine, seem to be doing much better now. I believe we'll be okay. I believe my ex passed away from an overdose while in rehab. We're not sure how she got access to medicaments, but she must have taken them while inside, and it seems something went terribly wrong. Substance dependency is a real issue, and it's truly heartbreaking. Seek support from your family if needed, and focus on taking care of your children. The current situation is distressing, but it will get better. Remember that your children need you more than ever, and your in-laws are going through even greater pain than you. Best of luck, and stay strong. My brother's wife helped my wife cheat on me. I uncovered their lies and got my revenge on them both. Jake had been plagued by migraines throughout his entire life, and at times, they would become incapacitating. His most recent episode occurred over a year ago, and he cherished each day without a migraine. Describing the intensity of severe migraines to someone who hasn't experienced them might be challenging, but prolonged suffering can make one yearn for an end to the pain, wishing for a peaceful departure. Although such severe migraines were infrequent for Jake, he understood the importance of heeding his body's signals and taking the necessary rest. Despite being a robust, muscular man of 35 years, on a Wednesday morning, Jake recognized the familiar signs: emerging double vision, dizziness, and a slight throbbing in his head. Aware of the potential risks, he opted not to drive and arranged for a taxi to take him home, instructing his secretary to cancel appointments for the day. He left the possibility of returning to the office tomorrow, pending. Given the week-long duration of these headaches, Jake preferred not to take any chances. Upon returning home, he took 2 Depot tablets, grabbed an ice pack, and headed to the living room adjacent to their spacious master bedroom. In a corner chair reserved for such rare occasions, he applied the ice pack to his head, closed his eyes, and attempted to meditate mindlessly. Despite the pain intensifying, he persevered in the hope that this migraine wouldn't be as severe as feared and that he could resume normal functioning within a couple of hours. While in his meditative state, Jake heard noises below, assuming it was his wife of 10 years, Linda. Deciding to remain seated, he wasn't prepared for conversation. Linda, understanding his condition, typically gave him space and quiet when he was home during a migraine attack. However, unbeknownst to Linda, Jake's car wasn't in the driveway, and he had no reason to be home at that time since he usually arrived every night at 6. Despite blocking out the noise and focusing on controlling the pain, Jake suddenly became aware that Linda wasn't alone. Another voice, a man's voice, reached his ears. Opening his eyes, he noticed Linda and the unidentified person heading upstairs to their bedroom. Staying still and silent, he eavesdropped on their conversation. Linda, on her cell phone, was giggling and chatting with Shelley, Jake's brother Rob's wife. The situation struck Jake as strange, and he questioned whether he was dreaming until he realized the truth of the situation unfolding before him. His return to reality was immediate upon hearing her speak. "Oh, Shelley, I'm currently with him. Thanks for arranging this date. I hope it goes as well as yours did last week. He'll call you tomorrow to plan another date. I'll provide a full report later. Got to go, thanks again." The agony in Jake's heart escalated beyond a migraine. Unsure of what to do, he realized. They were oblivious to his presence and the reasons behind it. Situated in the living room beside the bedroom, the chair he occupied remained out of sight, offering a concealed front-row view of the unfolding drama. As he sat there, his blood began to boil, doing nothing to alleviate his headache. Nausea intensified from both the migraine and the distressing events. Heartbroken, tears welled up as he acknowledged the end of his marriage with the woman he loved. In complete silence, he listened as the man praised his wife's allure. After their pants hit the floor, Jake found himself spiraling into an inescapable emotional abyss. He heard the couple lie down on the bed, and his wife, Linda, complimented the man, Blake, on their friendship and handling something substantial. Exerting self-restraint, he waited for the opportune moment to intervene, which arrived sooner than expected. After granting them a brief moment, he concluded it was time to confront the two lovers. Suppressing pain and anger, he rose and mustered the strength to face them in their marital bed. Moving slowly and quietly, although noise from the lovers drowned any sound, Linda, engrossed in betrayal, noticed Jake standing nearby. Panicking, she attempted to separate from Blake, who persisted despite her protests. The revelation came too late. Jake's head and heartache overwhelmed him. Retrieving a loaded Glock G45 from his nightstand, he aimed at Blake's left temple. Blake collapsed onto Linda, who lay in shock. With tear-filled eyes, Jake addressed Linda, saying, "I loved you with all my heart, and you took away everything I cherished. My heart is broken." He fired the next bullet into her head. Witnessing the departure of life from her body, Jake reached out to me, his brother Robbie. Despite having just committed a double homicide, his voice remained strangely calm. I greeted him casually, asking, "Hey bro, how are you?" Urgently, Jake instructed me to listen closely. He disclosed discovering Linda in bed with a guy named Blake, whom he suspected to be the new tennis instructor. Overhearing Linda talking to Shelley, he believed Shell might be involved with Blake as well. Worried, he advised me to keep an eye on Shelley. Interrupting any attempts to respond, Jake insisted I listen further. He admitted to eliminating Linda and Blake in his bed, emphasizing the gravity of his words. Wanting to spare me from his anguish, Jake encouraged me to investigate if Shelley was cheating on me. Overwhelmed by migraines and the profound betrayal, he couldn't endure it any longer. He expressed his love for me, apologized, and bid farewell before the phone went silent. Before putting the next bullet in his head, Jake dialed the emergency hotline to report the double homicide and self-destruction, ensuring they had the correct address. They found Jake in a chair with a migraine, holding a weapon, his head leaning against a nearby wall. Arriving minutes later, I encountered a bloody scene. I'm Robbie, and Jake was my older brother. This incident occurred a year ago, marking the worst day of my life and causing significant changes in my world. Losing my older brother to his unfaithful wife was challenging for everyone, particularly impactful on me. Jake had been my best friend, and I loved him deeply. The revelation of Linda's affair and the subsequent homicides and self-destruction turned her into a hated figure in our close-knit community. Still grappling with anger and depression over my brother's passing away, I kept Jake's revelations from Shelley, opting to closely monitor my wife. After Jake's self-destruction, I became paranoid and hired a high-end security company to install various monitoring devices and software. It took 2 weeks for everything to be ready. If Shell was involved in Linda's infidelity, I aimed to uncover the extent of her own betrayal. My pain persisted, and I became obsessed with understanding my wife's role in the case. Copulation between Shell and me became rare and cold after Jake's self-destruction and the revelation of Shelley's involvement in Linda's infidelity. Upon confirming Shell's infidelity, I harbored anger and a desire for revenge against her for betraying me and contributing to Jake's self-destruction. Over the year, the security company provided me with extensive video and audio recordings of Shelley and her lover engaging in loving acts. Although hurtful, the most painful aspects were Shell's conversations with her lover replaying certain phrases in my head. Her lover questioned why she stayed with me, highlighting their shared belief that our bed life was dull compared to theirs. He suggested she should leave me and move in with him. However, Shell explained that I was grieving my brother's passing away and coping with depression, not wanting to add more pressure on me. She reassured her lover that she didn't need copulation with me as long as she had him. Despite their physical connection, Shelley emphasized her love for me and her commitment to our relationship. She clarified that their relationship was purely about closeness, expressing nostalgia for Blake and disbelief at his demise. They discussed the absence of Blake and expressed concern about my mental state, hoping I wasn't as unstable as my brother. Shell's lover assured her he wouldn't bring her to our house like Blake did, and insisted they were fine, vowing never to get caught. He pledged not to let a similar incident happen to them. After discovering Shell's infidelity, I devised a plan. She had cheated on me with the assistant tennis coach, Jared Roberts, later promoted to head coach after Blake's untimely passing away. A few weeks later, my anticipated opportunity arrived. Jared was invited to a banquet honoring the country club's top tennis program. I called Shelley, informing her about the banquet, and she was thrilled at the idea of staying at the Ritz-Carlton and spending the entire night with him. Conveniently, I mentioned my 2-day trip coinciding with the banquet dates. My intention was to ensure Shelley had enough rope to hang herself. As expected, the next day she called Jared, sharing the good news. She persuaded him to take an extended trip, stay 3 nights at a hotel in Orlando, and promised to make his world rock. Naturally, he agreed. Over the next week, they talked about it on the phone and in their messages. It was Shell's idea to turn the getaway into a fake honeymoon, telling Jared she would like to be his new bride and wife for the 3 days. To further her plan, she even suggested buying a new engagement ring for the occasion and booking a honeymoon hotel room to make it more realistic. They planned to present themselves as newlyweds to attract attention and experience the thrill. She even told Jared that she wished it was real and that he really was her husband. Reading all these texts infuriated me and fueled the embers of my revenge. I was going to enjoy watching her face the demise of everything she loved. Shelley spent all her time working out in the gym, but I was unimpressed and wanted nothing to do with my cheating soon-to-be ex-wife. She was going to spend 3 days with Jared as his wife on a pretend honeymoon. This would be her first extended time alone with another man since she got married 10 years ago. Shelley and Jared thought it would be romantic, so she bought several attractive outfits, bikinis, and lingerie for their date and planned everything out. I was amazed and jealous of the effort she put into this guy. The love I once had for her was gone, and this level of betrayal drained the last drop of love I had left. It was over, and it was time for Shell to feel the pain. On the way to the hotel, I called Shelley but only received her voicemail. I left her a message saying that I loved her and would see her in days. Shell called me back an hour later, seemingly wanting to make sure I didn't suspect anything. She told me that she loved me and that the children were at their friend's house. Shelley mentioned she would order pizza when the kids got home and that they would watch movies all night. She expressed how much she missed me, said goodbye, and told me that she loved me more than anything in the world, eagerly awaiting my return. The realization hit me like a wave, and I couldn't believe she would lie to me so easily. Arriving at the hotel, I handed my car to the valet. Inquiring at the reception, I asked if Mr. and Mrs. Roberts had checked in earlier. My anger intensified when the receptionist confirmed that the newlyweds had indeed checked into their honeymoon suite the day before. To gather more information, I contacted the hotel's restaurants and confirmed their reservation for 6 p.m. that evening at the main restaurant. Strategically choosing the best viewing spot, I carefully followed the couple throughout dinner without being noticed. As they left, I positioned myself at the entrance, planning to make it appear as if I were entering the restaurant at the same time they were leaving. Observing the newlyweds holding hands, I timed everything perfectly. I deliberately turned the corner to run into them. At that moment, I collided with Shell's beau, nearly knocking him over, and everyone turned to look. We both staggered slightly, regained composure with a smile, and I took a step back, apologizing. "Oh, I'm so sorry, excuse me." Then I spotted Shelley, mouth agape, simulating shock and surprise. She, adorned in her alluring dress, wished to flee and hide. Her worst fear had materialized. Caught in complete shock with wide-open eyes, she was exposed. I addressed her. "Shelley, is that you?" "What are you doing here?" I said with a practiced expression on my face. Jared, her boyfriend, couldn't comprehend who I was or what was unfolding for several minutes. I then stepped back, gazing at my wife as if her outfit astonished me. I couldn't fathom how she appeared. She wore a very short, low-cut dress with no bra, nylon stockings, captivating heels, and glamorous makeup and hair. Thoughts raced through my mind, desiring that she could dress similarly for me. It seemed like a special ensemble, and I had never seen her exude such sensuality. I was perplexed, contemplating the circumstances. Shelley acknowledged she was caught and struggled to think of something to say, but she just stood there with her mouth agape, attempting to compose herself. She mentioned that I should be in Jacksonville, explaining that plans had changed due to her job. Bewildered by the scene, I questioned if she was provocatively dressed with some guy. I suggested going out into the lobby to talk, almost shouting and grabbing her hand. Once in the lobby, I confronted her, revisiting our earlier discussion about staying home with the children. I inquired about her presence at the hotel and the person she was on a date with. I repeated my disbelief, wondering if it wasn't what I thought. Looking at her hand and then into her eyes, I pointed out the absence of her wedding rings and questioned if she had cheated on me. Observing the replaced gold ring on her finger, a stark contrast to the large diamond one given by her lover for their pretend honeymoon weekend, she seemed trapped, yearning to escape. In response, she claimed her love for me, insisting it meant nothing. I pressed on, questioning the absence of her wedding ring and the presence of a new gold ring, accusing her of leaving me for someone else. I asserted that it seemed like something was indeed happening. Throughout, I heightened the pressure, savoring every moment of her confusion. In that tense moment, I turned to the tennis player, my voice firm as I demanded an explanation. "Why don't you tell me what's going on?" Shelley, caught in the middle, looked at Jared with fear, unsure of how he would respond. Jared, attempting to ease the situation, told me to relax, echoing Shell's assurance that nothing inappropriate was happening. He explained there was an awards banquet at the hotel and that Shelley had kindly accompanied him to support our country club. According to him, it was just a favor and everything was fine. Suppressing a laugh, I tried to comprehend the absurdity of the situation. I pressed further, questioning if Shelley was only being nice and attending the ceremony as Jared's date. Then I inquired about their lodging, making it clear that lying would not be tolerated. I intended to inspect both rooms before leaving. Silence fell as they both looked at the floor, avoiding eye contact. Shelley, breaking the silence, pleaded with me not to be upset, expressing her love and attempting to downplay the situation by mentioning that only a few days would have passed and no one would have known about it. The harsh reality struck as the truth unfolded. She spent a few days with him, sharing the same room, engaging in loving acts, and conspicuously absent were my wedding rings, replaced by a new gold band. Shock set in as I confronted her with disbelief. Despite already knowing the answer, I didn't let up, feigning astonishment. "Darling, it's not what you think," she tried to explain, seeking to justify her actions. My anger, though simulated, surged as I demanded a straightforward response. "Answer the question. I'll go to the front desk to get some answers, so you better start talking." "Do you live in the same room? Answer me." Tearfully, she admitted yes. The floodgates opened, and she sobbed, unable to hide the truth any longer. "Are you having closeness? And remember, I'm not an idiot." Again, through tears, Shelley confessed, yes. The pivotal question lingered. "Are you pretending to be his wife?" Sobbing, she insisted, "It's not what you think, baby." I pressed harder, demanding a clear response. "Answer the damn question. Did you check into this hotel as Mr. and Mrs. Roberts?" In embarrassment and with a tearful voice, she reluctantly admitted, "Yes." I grasped the situation and made a decision, stating that I understood. I informed Shelley that I would leave her and her new husband alone. I mentioned that I was returning home and that we would contact a lawyer in the morning. I conveyed that we were done, emphasizing that she had left our love, our marriage, and our life together, all to have fun with that tennis player. Shelley pleaded desperately, expressing her love and stating that she didn't want a divorce. She emphasized that I was her husband and she couldn't lose me, urging me to understand. I remained firm, stating that I didn't understand. I offered one more chance for her to explain the situation so that I could understand. I asked her to tell me why I should put up with my wife sleeping with another man and pretending to be his wife. She begged once again, asking me to understand that it was only supposed to last a few days and that she needed it. She insisted that it was just about closeness and that she didn't love him, emphasizing that she only loved me. I questioned whether I should be okay with her sleeping with another man for a few days to have some fun. Shelley, now hysterical, sobbed between her hands, realizing the gravity of her actions and lacking a good excuse. All she could do was beg for understanding, apologizing and expressing her love. She acknowledged that it sounded bad but believed we could get through it. She pleaded for forgiveness, expressing her desire to be with me. Silence ensued. The tennis guy grew irritated and impatient, interjecting to tell me to step back a little and pointing out how upset Shelley was. I turned to Jared with a death stare, instructing him to shut up and get out of my sight. I told him to leave me and my real wife alone, emphasizing that he had already ruined our marriage and that should be enough for the day. Unfazed, Jared stood up, placed his hand on Shelley's shoulder, and stated that he would be in their room, asking her to come up when I was done. She pushed his hand away furiously, not wanting anything to do with him in that moment. I couldn't help but laugh. I comprehended the situation and made a decision. Suddenly, she no longer desired to be with her lover, and he reveled in everything unfolding. I continued to taunt Shelley as she sat there sobbing, urging her not to be rude to her new husband. I suggested that I might be ruining their honeymoon, and emphasized that we both knew she wanted this and no longer wanted to be with me. I insinuated that she didn't love me, claiming that if she did, she wouldn't cheat on me and show me such disrespect. After Jared departed, we were left alone. She pleaded with me to stay, gazing at me with imploring eyes. For a few minutes, I questioned her about the duration of her involvement with Jared. Once again, she lied, insisting it was their first encounter. I marveled at how effortlessly she could deceive me. I probed further, asking if she had ever spoken ill of me or scolded me to Jared during our time together, or during loving moments. Once again, she lied, denying any such behavior. She reassured me, expressing her love and emphasizing my significance to her. She urged us to leave, proposing an immediate return home to be together. Amidst a whirlwind of emotions, I took out my phone and muted the audio. With a heavy heart, I initiated a playlist featuring snippets of our conversations from the past 6 months. Firstly, I'm aware of your 2-year-long infidelity. Secondly, could you explain this to me? The sound was crisp and loud. The first audio assured someone not to worry about me, claiming ignorance. The second audio expressed dissatisfaction, voicing dislike for our loving moments due to my perceived dullness. The third audio professed commitment, choosing to stay not for the physical aspect but out of love. Subsequently, the fourth audio acknowledged me as a good provider and father with no intention of letting me go. The fifth audio made a damning comparison, hinting at someone else being better in bed. The sixth audio conveyed affection and love for another person's ability to arouse her. The seventh audio declared allegiance, stating that her entirety belonged to someone else, not me. Over 50 audio files followed, each one mocking and humiliating me and our marriage. I couldn't fathom the depth of her contempt for me. Her words transcended playful banter. They were profoundly hurtful and disrespectful. Unfortunately, these words would continue to haunt me indefinitely. She wore an expression of apathy, shock, sadness, and utter devastation, a marked departure from her usual demeanor. There was a certain satisfaction in witnessing her grasp the reality that she had irreversibly shattered the marriage, and things would never be the same for her. In a resolute tone, I communicated to Shell that our relationship was terminated due to my inability to endure her lies any longer. I disclosed my awareness of her infidelity and extramarital affairs spanning at least 2 years. Adding a layer of intrigue, I informed her that Jake had contacted me the night he shot his wife and her ex-lover. Overhearing her conversation with Linda about her fondness for Blake's friend, I had been cognizant of her deceit, lies, and disrespect towards me. My intention had been to see how far she would go, and she hadn't slowed down. I highlighted how her actions and remarks unmistakably portrayed me merely as a good provider and father to our children. Disclosing the existence of audio recordings of all her calls and messages, I underscored that I knew her true sentiments about me, our bed life, and her discontent. The ultimatum was straightforward: she must cease the deception and lies, or the truth would be exposed to everyone. After a significant pause, I conveyed that I would be reasonable, but she needed to sign the divorce papers without contesting the agreement. I cautioned that if she chose to resist, I wouldn't hesitate to reveal all the videos and audios to everyone, including her parents. I pointed out that our children were old enough to decide who they wanted to live with, and after we explained her infidelity, lies, and deceit, I was confident they would choose to live with me. I expressed to Shelley that the truly heartbreaking aspect of all this was that I once loved her with all my heart and envisioned a lifetime together. I shared that when Jake first told me about her, I refused to believe it, but the terrible truth unfolded and my heart shattered. I made it clear that she would have to live with the weight of guilt and the loss of love forever, stating firmly, "We are never ever getting back together." Leaving Shelley in tears, I rose, drove home, and grappled with my brother's passing away. I contemplated that revenge didn't bring peace. 5 years later, I encountered a woman in a cafe, and we developed a close friendship. I refrained from remarrying, explaining that I could never trust another woman the way I did before. We dated for several years and remained friends. Shelley suffered a nervous breakdown and was hospitalized for a year after the divorce was finalized. She was never invited back to the city where they learned of her involvement in the loss of lives of Jake and Linda and her betrayal of the family. She lost custody of her children and only saw them every other weekend. She spent several years deeply depressed because of what she had done. As long as she continued to take her medication, she was able to live off the divorce agreement and her job as a secretary in a real estate office in another city. The children grew up without any problems because I kept them safe and protected. The people around us rallied around me and the children, which allowed us to lead a normal life. Shelley never recovered from the loss of her love, her children, and the wonderful life she once had. Every night she went to bed thinking about how many lives she had ruined, and how her life had been ruined by selfishness and narcissism. Shelley became an active church attender and eventually dedicated her life to the church in hopes of finding forgiveness. Oh yeah, Mr. Tennis Pro was attacked one night after leaving another married mistress. His 2 Achilles tendons were cut after being tasered. At this point, his tennis career ended. When the police asked him what happened and what he remembered, he remained silent and did not say anything. However, he remembered the voice and received the message loud and clear. He could identify the voice but decided not to share the message with police. He will never forget what he was told: stop seducing married women.
In the early years of Lee and Maxwell Enterprises, Alexander Lee and Russell Maxwell were an unbeatable team. Their shared vision and complementary skills turned a fledgling startup into an industry powerhouse. Alexander's methodical approach to strategy and Russell's charm brought in investors and opportunities that seemed almost too good to be true. Their friendship deepened with every success, culminating in a joint celebration of their company's 5th anniversary, a night that marked the beginning of a deeper intertwining of their personal and professional lives. As their empire grew, cracks began to form in their partnership. Subtle disagreements over priorities and ethical boundaries crept into boardroom discussions. Alexander believed in discipline and long-term stability, while Russell often pursued riskier ventures for quicker returns. Despite their differences, Alexander never doubted his partner's loyalty, nor did he question the sincerity of his wife, Gloria, whose charm and elegance made her the perfect complement to his public image. However, the reality hidden behind polished facades would soon upend everything Alexander had built, both at work and at home. The dim glow of Alexander Lee's computer illuminated his tired face as he scrutinized financial data by the rain-streaked window of his home office. The rhythmic drumming of water on glass accompanied his late-night review, filling the otherwise silent mansion. Gloria claimed to be home, yet the vast estate felt hollow, as though her presence barely lingered. His cursor hesitated over a spreadsheet when a new notification caught his eye. Thomas Reed, his private investigator, had sent the weekly report. Alexander's jaw clenched, but he opened the message without hesitation. Photos loaded one by one, Gloria's silver Mercedes entering the Constellation Hotel's parking garage at 7:45 p.m. on Wednesday, her emerging from the elevator 40 minutes later in a red dress she'd said was at the dry cleaners. And the final shot, Russell Maxwell, his business partner, following her out a few minutes later, adjusting his tie. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. "Mr. Lee?" Maria, their housekeeper, stood at the door. "Mrs. Lee called. She won't be home until 11. Her dinner with Miss Orr is running late." Alexander checked his watch. 9:45 p.m., the same time Gloria always called on Wednesdays. "Thanks, Maria. You can go home." Once Maria left, Alexander opened his safe and pulled out a leather-bound notebook, adding tonight's new details to a growing list. Gloria's changing passwords, her gym membership across town, her new interest in book club meetings with no books. His phone buzzed with a text from Jonathan Griffith, his lawyer and oldest friend. "Got your message. Free for breakfast tomorrow?" Alexander replied. 7 a.m. at the diner on 7th. Bring everything on Russell's Singapore project. Closing his laptop, Alexander walked to the window, watching the rain blur the garden into shadows. 8 years of building Lee and Maxwell Enterprises from a startup to a multi-billion-dollar corporation, now undone by a hotel keycard and a red dress. The front door opened, followed by the click of heels on marble. Gloria's laugh echoed, her practiced theatrical laugh, perfected for charity galas. Alexander stayed still, listening. Her purse on the console, heels kicked off, the rustle of her coat. "Alex?" Her voice floated up the stairs. "Still working, darling?" He turned, composing his face into a mask of mild interest. "Just finishing up. How was dinner with Kate?" Gloria appeared in the doorway, her blonde hair damp from the rain. The red dress was gone. "You know Kate." 3 glasses of wine, and suddenly she's spilling all her dating drama. She kissed his cheek. Her perfume mixed with the familiar cologne he'd noticed on Russell. "You work too hard, honey. Come to bed." "In a bit. I need to review these reports for tomorrow's meeting." She pouted playfully. The company would collapse without you, wouldn't it? Her phone buzzed, and her expression flickered before she tucked it away. Don't stay up too late. After Gloria left, Alexander returned to his desk and sent Thomas an email. Keep up surveillance. Focus on the financials. I need every restaurant bill, hotel charge, gift, and everything on Russell's personal accounts. He leaned back, recalling the day he'd introduced Russell to Gloria at the company's 5th anniversary party. Russell had been charming, everything Alexander knew his wife would admire. Now he wondered if that night had been the start of it all, every laugh and touch a step toward betrayal. The rain picked up outside, masking the sound of Gloria's shower upstairs. Alexander opened the company's org chart and studied it. Russell might have Gloria, but Alexander had built something far more valuable, his network of loyal employees and board members, plus enough evidence of Russell's recent missteps to ruin him professionally. He scrolled through his phone to Marcy King's number. The CFO had been raising concerns about Russell's financials for months. Tomorrow's breakfast with Jonathan would be just the beginning, but Marcy would be key to what came next. A text from Russell flashed on his screen. Drinks tomorrow. Need to talk about the Singapore expansion. Alexander's lips curled into a cold smile as he typed, Can't. Breakfast with Jonathan. Rain check. He powered down his computer, gathered his papers, and listened to Gloria moving around upstairs. Let her think her excuses were working. Alexander knew revenge, like success, required patience, precision, and seeing 10 moves ahead while your opponent was still playing checkers. Tomorrow, he'd start positioning his pieces. But tonight, he'd go upstairs and play the devoted husband, one last time. The best victories were the ones your enemies never saw coming. At 6:55 a.m., the corner cafe on 7th Street was nearly empty. Alexander took his usual booth in the back. Janet, the elderly waitress who'd served him for 15 years, brought his coffee without asking. The usual, Mr. Lee? Thanks, Janet. Make it 2. Jonathan's joining me. She nodded, glancing at the stack of folders on the table. Serious business today? Always is, he replied with a rare smile, the corners of his eyes crinkling. Jonathan Griffith arrived 5 minutes later, his suit a little rumpled from what Alexander assumed was another late night at the office. His briefcase was stuffed with documents as he slid into the booth. You look rough, Alexander said, pushing a coffee cup toward him. Spent all night on Russell's Singapore files, Jonathan replied, taking a long drink. It's worse than we thought. The whole project is built on speculation and creative accounting. Janet returned with their egg white omelets and wheat toast, a nod to their wives' health kick. Once she was out of earshot, Alexander said, Show me everything. Jonathan spread out a stack of reports between bites of toast. He's inflating projected returns, using outdated market analysis to justify the investment. But this is where it gets interesting. He slid a document toward Alexander. Look at the subsidiary handling local contracts. Alexander scanned the paper, pausing. Maxwell Pacific Holdings. When did he set this up? 3 months ago. About the time your wife started those weekly dinners with Kador, Jonathan said, his tone careful. It's registered in Singapore, but the ownership is hidden behind shell companies. He's funneling development fees through it, marking up costs by 30%. The board doesn't know? Alexander asked. Not yet, but Randall Ramsey's been asking questions. You know how thorough he is with audits. Alexander nodded, recalling Randall's support when he first proposed the merger that formed Lee and Maxwell Enterprises. What about Stephanie? Does Russell's wife suspect anything? She's too focused on her gala, Jonathan hesitated. But there's something else. My new girlfriend, Kate... Kate Orr, Alexander interrupted, raising an eyebrow. Jonathan nodded. Gloria's friend. Kate said something interesting last night. Gloria's been asking about divorce lawyers, specifically ones who handle high-net-worth cases. Alexander's jaw tightened. Has she? Kate thinks Gloria's planning to leave you. She and Russell have been meeting at the Constellation Hotel every Wednesday for the last 3 months. Alexander's voice was calm. I know. Jonathan stared at him. How long have you known? Long enough, Alexander said, pulling out his phone and showing Jonathan the PI's photos. I needed to be sure. Now I am. What's the plan? Jonathan asked. First, we get Marcy King's cooperation as CFO. Her concerns about the Singapore project will carry weight with the board, Alexander replied, sipping his coffee. Then we start quietly working on other board members. Randall's questions were perfect timing. As for Gloria, his expression hardened. Let her think she's winning. If she wants to leave, fine, but it'll be on my terms. Janet appeared with the coffee pot. Refill, gentlemen? Please, Alexander said, waiting until she left again. How quickly can you freeze Russell's access to corporate accounts? With enough proof, 24 hours, Jonathan answered. But we'll need Marcy's sign-off. Alexander checked his watch. She'll be in her office by now. Tell her I want to meet for lunch. That new spot near her office she's been wanting to try. He gathered the documents, his movements controlled. One more thing. Start divorce proceedings quietly, but don't file anything yet. Alex, Jonathan leaned forward, his voice cautious. Are you sure about this? Once we start, there's no going back. Alexander placed several bills on the table, covering their breakfast and leaving a generous tip for Janet. Russell brought this on himself. He could have had any woman, but he chose my wife. Now he'll lose everything. His company, his reputation, his marriage. And Gloria, she'll learn that betrayal has consequences. He stood, adjusting his tie. Send me the Singapore documents. I have a board meeting at 10. It's time to ask some very public questions about our expansion strategy. Jonathan watched him leave, remembering the ambitious but cautious man he once knew in law school. Now Alexander moved like a carnivore. He dialed Marcy King's number. Whatever was coming, Russell and Gloria had already lost. Marcy's office on the 42nd floor offered a panoramic city view. When Alexander arrived at 1 p.m., she was already sorting through documents. Lunch is here, she said without looking up. Figured we'd need privacy for this. Alexander studied Marcy. Sharp features, glasses perched on her nose, the methodical way she worked. She'd been with the company 6 years, trusted for her financial oversight, and never fooled by Russell's charm. How bad is it? He asked. Marcy rubbed her eyes. Remember the Q2 irregularities? It's worse. Russell's manipulating project costs, creating fake vendors, inflating fees. The Singapore expansion is just the beginning. A knock interrupted them as lunch arrived. After the delivery person left, Alexander unwrapped his sandwich. Show me everything. For the next hour, Marcy detailed a web of financial misconduct. Shell companies, backdated contracts, suspicious wire transfers. With each revelation, Alexander's expression grew colder. Look at this, Marcy said, pulling up another document. Dinner for 2 at Le Cirque, charged as business development. A suite at the Constellation Hotel marked client meetings every Wednesday. Alexander's voice was low and controlled. Yes, Alex. Before she could respond, his phone buzzed. It was a text from Gloria. Working late? Don't wait up. Alexander showed Marcy the message, then pulled up the PI's photos. Her eyes widened as she flipped through them. That son of a witch, she whispered. I'm sorry. Don't be, Alexander replied. You've given me exactly what I needed. He leaned forward. The board meeting next month. I need you to present a full audit of the Singapore project. Every discrepancy, every questionable decision. They'll crucify him, Marcy said. That's the plan, Alexander said, his smile cold. But first, I need you to meet someone. Right on cue, Jonathan entered, carrying his briefcase. Miss King, he nodded. I believe you have some documents for me. For the next 2 hours, they strategized. Marcy provided documents. Jonathan took notes, and Alexander watched as the city lights came on. One last thing, Alexander said as they wrapped up. This stays between us. Russell thinks he's untouchable. Let's keep it that way. Back in his office, Alexander saw a message from Stephanie Maxwell, Russell's wife. She asked if he'd be attending the annual charity gala next weekend. He confirmed and then called Jonathan. How much does Stephanie know about the foundation's funding? Alexander asked. Nothing yet. Why? Jonathan replied. Because Russell's been using company donations to fund it. Once the board sees Marcy's audit, the donations stop, Alexander said. We need to make sure she has other funding options. Set up a meeting with her next week. Tell her it's about increasing our support for the foundation. After hanging up, Alexander stood at his window, watching the city below. Somewhere, Gloria and Russell were with each other, thinking they'd outsmarted him. His phone buzzed again, another text from Gloria. Miss you? Drinks with the girls. Don't work too hard. Alexander didn't respond. Instead, he began drafting an email to Randall Ramsey, requesting an emergency board meeting. The pieces were in place, the allies secured. It was just a matter of timing. He glanced at the framed photo on his desk, him and Russell at the company launch, smiling, arms around each other. Tomorrow, he'd take it down. Tonight, it would remind him that in business, as in marriage, trust was a weapon that hurt the most when betrayed. The morning sun streamed through the boardroom's floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long shadows across the mahogany table. Board members filed in, their usual chatter subdued by the seriousness of today's agenda, Russell Maxwell's proposed expansion plan. At the head of the table, Russell exuded confidence as he handed out presentation folders. "What I'm about to show you will transform our position in the Asian market," he said, clicking through his PowerPoint slides. Alexander observed from his seat, noting Russell's trembling hands despite his smooth delivery. Marcy King, sitting beside him, quietly arranged her financial reports, ones that painted a much different picture than Russell's glowing projections. "The Singapore project is a huge opportunity," Russell continued, "a $500 million investment with a 30% return within 18 months. Randall Ramsey, head of the audit committee, adjusted his glasses. "Ambitious numbers. What's the basis for these projections?" "Market analysis and agreements with local partners," Russell replied, his smile unwavering, though a bead of sweat formed at his temple. "All the documentation is in your packets." Randall raised an eyebrow, pulling out another set of papers. "I have the latest market reports from Singapore, and they show a 15% decline in the sector you're targeting." The room went cold. Russell's smile faltered. "Those reports must be outdated. Our research shows—" "I think we should hear from our CFO," Alexander interjected. All eyes turned to him. "Marcy, what's your take?" Marcy stood and connected her laptop to the projector. The screen filled with charts and numbers that made several board members lean in. "We've thoroughly analyzed the expansion. The returns Russell presented assume a best-case scenario and don't align with current market trends. We've also spotted concerning patterns in the preliminary expenditures." Russell's face reddened. "Those are just draft numbers. I can explain." "Please do," Alexander said smoothly. "Like the $2.3 million in consulting fees paid to Maxwell Pacific Holdings, a company registered in Singapore 3 months ago?" The room erupted in murmurs. Russell gripped the table, his knuckles white. "That's standard for international deals. We needed a local entity." "A local entity that lists you as the sole beneficiary," Randall cut in. "That's a conflict of interest, Russell." "Alexander!" Russell turned to his partner, desperation creeping into his voice. "You know how these deals work. Sometimes we need flexible arrangements." Alexander met his gaze coldly. "Does that flexibility usually involve charging personal expenses to the company, like weekly bookings at the Constellation Hotel?" The room fell silent. Russell's face went pale as the expense report appeared on the screen, with the hotel charges highlighted in red. "I move to suspend the expansion plan until we complete a full audit," Randall said, his voice firm, "and freeze all discretionary spending until we understand the scope of these issues." "I second the motion," another board member added. Russell looked around, seeing no allies among the board. "This is ridiculous, Alexander. We built this company together. You can't— All in favor?" Alexander's calm voice cut through the tension. Hands rose around the table. Russell's confidence crumbled as his empire began to unravel. "Motion carried," Alexander announced. "Marcy, secure all relevant accounts by the end of today. Russell, you'll be available for the audit team's questions." As the board members filed out, Russell stayed rooted to the spot, staring at the damning numbers on the screen. Alexander gathered his papers slowly, feeling Russell's eyes on him. "How long have you known?" Russell whispered. Alexander paused at the door. "Long enough to know betrayal comes in many forms. Some professional, some personal." He turned to face Russell. "Some I'll deal with later." Russell's face drained of color as understanding dawned. Before he could respond, Alexander's phone buzzed. It was a text from Gloria. "Lunch today. Miss you." "You should answer that," Alexander said, noting Russell's instinctive move toward his own phone. "It might be important." He left the boardroom, leaving Russell to face the wreckage of his plans. In the elevator, Alexander quickly messaged Jonathan. "Phase 1 complete. Proceed with Phase 2. At home, Alexander reviewed audit reports in his office, his sanctuary in the battle against Russell's betrayal. The evening sun cast long shadows across his desk when Gloria appeared in the doorway, dressed in a designer outfit. "You've been impossible to reach today," she said, irritation in her voice. "Board meeting ran long. Russell's expansion plan didn't go as planned," Alexander replied, not looking up. Gloria's fingers tightened around her phone. "That's surprising. He seems so confident." "Confidence doesn't always mean competence," Alexander said, finally looking up. He noticed her lipstick was freshly reapplied. "How was your day?" "Fine. Lunch with Kate. Shopping," she answered, her tone slightly off. "You've been working so much lately, I barely see you anymore." "The Singapore project needs attention," Alexander replied, watching her closely. Russell's decisions have put us in a tough spot. Gloria's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, her expression flickering with concern. I should let you work. Will you be up soon? Don't wait up, Alexander replied. After Gloria left, Alexander opened his laptop and sifted through surveillance photos of her and Russell at La Bernardin that afternoon. They sat close, his hand covering hers, speaking in urgent whispers. The photos came with a note from his PI. Maxwell looked agitated. Meeting lasted 47 minutes. His phone rang. Jonathan Griffith. The charity gala's this weekend. Stephanie Hopkins confirmed your attendance. Perfect, Alexander replied. And Gloria? Kate convinced her to go shopping for a new dress tomorrow. She'll make sure it's something memorable. The weekend arrived with perfect weather for the Hopkins Foundation's annual gala. Held at the Metropolitan Museum's rooftop garden, it was a glittering affair. Alexander arrived fashionably late and noticed how Russell and Gloria carefully maintained their distance, stealing nervous glances when they thought no one was watching. Stephanie Hopkins, radiant in midnight blue, greeted him warmly. I'm so glad you could make it. Wouldn't miss it. He kissed her cheek, aware of Russell watching from across the garden. Your foundation's work is impressive. I've been reviewing the reports. Thank you, she smiled. Though I'm a bit worried about next year's funding. Russell's been evasive about the company's usual contribution. Has he? Alexander guided her to a quiet corner. Actually, I've been meaning to talk to you. I'm particularly interested in your educational initiatives. They stood close enough to where Gloria was with Kate, pretending not to watch Russell struggle to network with board members who suddenly found their champagne glasses fascinating. Your work is important, Alexander said louder now. It'd be a shame if anything threatened its funding. Stephanie's eyes widened. What do you mean? Maybe we should review the foundation's financial structure. Over lunch next week, I might have suggestions for its long-term stability. Later, as the party wound down, Alexander watched Gloria and Russell share a brief, tense conversation by the elevators. Their distance, her fidgeting with her clutch, and Russell's subtle shake of his head all signaled panic. His phone buzzed with a text from Marcy. Audit team found something big. Emergency board meeting for Monday. Alexander sipped his champagne, watching his wife and business partner realize their world was falling apart. Timing was everything. Monday brought steady rain, turning Manhattan into a maze of umbrellas and traffic. Alexander sat in his office, reports from the audit team flooding his inbox. A knock on his door revealed Jonathan, his face grim. Russell's been trying to access restricted accounts. 3 attempts to wire funds to Singapore. Desperate men make desperate choices, Alexander said, turning from the window. What's his financial situation? Bad. He's leveraged everything on this expansion. With the board freezing the project, he's starting to crack. As if on cue, Russell barged in, panic replacing his usual polish. This has gone far enough, Alexander. Call off the audit. Sit down, Russell. Alexander's tone was firm. Jonathan, give us a minute. Once alone, Russell paced. You're destroying everything we built. Over what? A disagreement? Is that what we're calling it? Alexander's voice was calm. This afternoon, the board will receive a report on your financial misconduct. Unauthorized accounts, embezzled funds, fake consultancy fees, personal expenses charged to the company, including hotel rooms. Russell froze. Alex, don't. Did you think I wouldn't find out? Alexander said, cutting him off. I knew about you and Gloria. You've been sloppy. Now you'll lose everything. Your position, reputation, marriage. You can't prove anything. I already have. Alexander slid a folder across the desk. The board meets at 2. You might want to consider resigning before they see this. Russell snatched the folder, shaking as he flipped through the evidence. Without a word, he stormed out. The morning passed in a blur of meetings. By lunch, the office buzzed with rumors of something big. Alexander worked through his sandwich, reviewing his presentation for the board. His phone lit up with a text from Gloria. We need to talk. Coming to your office. Minutes later, she stood in his doorway, her usual confidence replaced by nervous energy. What have you done to Russell? I haven't done anything, Alexander replied coolly. His own actions caught up with him. He's falling apart, Gloria said, voice shaking. He called me this morning talking about leaving the country. Are you worried about your lover or your lifestyle? Alexander's question cut through her protests. Don't worry, you'll both get exactly what you deserve. She stared at him, realization sinking in. You knew. All this time you knew about us. Did you think you were clever? The Wednesday night dinners, the secret business meetings? He walked to the window. You should go home, Gloria. Pack what matters to you. The next few days will be unpleasant. You can't do this. I already have. He turned back to her. It's done, all of it. Before she could respond, his intercom buzzed. Mr. Lee, the board is assembling. Thank you, Sarah. He gathered his papers. You should go, Gloria. Your boyfriend has an important meeting to attend. Alexander entered the boardroom at exactly 2 p.m., followed by Marcy King and Jonathan. Russell sat alone at the far end of the table, his usual allies missing. For the next hour, Marcy presented their findings: bank statements, wire transfers, and falsified reports. The evidence piled up, stripping Russell of any remaining dignity. When the vote was called, it was unanimous. Russell Maxwell was removed from his position, and his access to company resources was terminated. As security arrived to escort him out, Russell turned to Alexander one last time. You've won. Are you happy now? Alexander straightened his tie, unaffected by the wreckage around him. Happiness was never the goal, Russell. Justice was. Later that evening, Alexander sat in his home office, waiting. He heard Gloria's heels on the stairs, her nervous energy palpable even through the closed door. His phone buzzed with a message from Jonathan. It's done. All accounts frozen. Divorce papers ready. Alexander closed his laptop, listening to Gloria's footsteps draw closer. The trap had closed perfectly, but there was still one final scene to play out. Rain hit the windows as Gloria paced in front of Alexander's desk, her designer heels clicking on the hardwood floor. Her earlier confidence was cracking under his steady gaze. Why aren't you angry? She demanded, her voice rising. I just told you I've been sleeping with your business partner for months. Alexander leaned back in his chair, calm. Tell me, Gloria, after all those months with Russell, did you ever wonder why it was so easy? Why I never questioned your Wednesday night dinners or your sudden interest in Kate's love life? Her face drained of color. What do you mean? I mean, he said, opening his laptop, that Russell's about to learn a hard lesson about mixing pleasure with business. He turned the screen toward her, showing documents that made her stumble back into the chair. That's impossible, she whispered. The board's emergency meeting concluded an hour ago, Alexander said with a cold smile. Russell's financial misconduct has forced an emergency restructuring. Your lover doesn't know it yet, but his company now belongs to me. Gloria gripped the armrests. You're lying. Russell would have told me if he was losing everything? If his Singapore project was built on embezzled funds? Alexander walked to the drink cart. Russell's too busy watching his empire crumble to warn his mistress. Want to see the termination papers? They're quite thorough. Termination? She jumped to her feet. You can't fire him. He built this company with you. And then he betrayed everything we built, Alexander said, pouring himself a scotch. The board voted unanimously. Russell will be removed as CEO tomorrow. Meanwhile, Stephanie has already filed for divorce with evidence of his financial misconduct. Gloria collapsed into the chair, her arrogance crumbling. Stephanie knows about the affair? Not yet, Alexander replied, sipping his drink. But she knows about Russell using company funds to finance your rendezvous, the shell companies, the misappropriated assets. She's grateful for my help protecting her foundation's interests. The foundation? Gloria's eyes widened. The gala. When you told Stephanie it would be a shame if anything threatened the funding. I was making sure she understood her options, Alexander said. His phone buzzed with a confirmation from Jonathan. Just as I'm ensuring you understand yours. Gloria's panic turned to desperation. Alex, please, we can fix this. I made a terrible mistake, but save it, he cut her off. I've watched you play the devoted wife for months. It's not convincing anymore. You cold-hearted fool, she spat. You set us up. All those business meetings, the late nights, you were orchestrating this. No, Gloria, Alexander said quietly but firmly. You and Russell orchestrated your own downfall. I just made sure you had enough rope to hang yourselves. He moved to the window. Russell chose to embezzle company funds to impress his mistress. You chose to betray our marriage for cheap thrills with him. I simply chose the consequence. Her phone buzzed, Russell's name flashing on the screen. Alexander smiled as she stared at it, panic rising. You should answer that. I imagine he has quite a bit to say about tomorrow's board announcement. Gloria grabbed her phone, reading Russell's frantic messages. This will destroy him. she whispered. That was the point, Alexander replied, his voice devoid of remorse. Did you really think you could flaunt your affair, spend my money, and face no consequences? I'll fight you, she threatened weakly. Both of us will. Both of us? He laughed coldly. Gloria, Russell's facing criminal charges for financial fraud. His assets are frozen, his reputation is ruined, and his wife's lawyers are circling. He won't be fighting anyone except prosecutors. The rain intensified, matching the storm on Gloria's face. Another message from Russell flashed on her phone. He's being escorted out of the building as we speak, Alexander said. Security is quite efficient when properly motivated. Gloria stood unsteadily, fear replacing her earlier confidence. What happens now? Now, Alexander said, sliding a thick envelope across the desk. You leave. The divorce papers are ready. Your things will be moved to storage. Your access to our accounts has already been terminated. You can't just... I can, and I have, he replied. The prenuptial agreement you signed is very clear about infidelity. You'll find the terms ungenerous. Gloria stared at the envelope, tears breaking through her composure. But Alexander saw no remorse, only the realization that her world was collapsing. Why like this? She asked, voice barely audible. You could have confronted us months ago. Alexander's expression remained unchanged. Because revenge, like business, requires patience and precision. You thought Russell was the powerful partner. I wanted you both to understand how wrong you were. Her phone buzzed one last time. Another message from Russell, which drained the color from her face. Ah, Alexander noted. He's heard from Stephanie's lawyers. Timing is everything, isn't it? The rain continued its steady rhythm as Gloria realized the full impact of her choices. In one evening, she lost her marriage, lifestyle, and the man she'd risked everything for. Alexander, the husband she'd underestimated, watched her world burn with cold detachment. The next morning was bright and unforgiving. Russell Maxwell arrived at Lee and Maxwell Enterprises for the last time, surrounded by security guards and a dozen smartphone cameras. I'm sorry, Mr. Maxwell, said James, head of security, blocking his path. Your access has been revoked. This is my company, Russell yelled, his anger palpable. Not anymore, Jonathan Griffith said, stepping forward with two attorneys. The board's decision is final. Don't make this worse than it already is. Inside, employees watched from the windows as Russell's meltdown continued. His suit couldn't hide the sweat pouring down his neck as he pointed at Jonathan. Where's Alexander? Too scared to face me? Mr. Lee's in a board meeting, Jonathan replied, his tone cold. He's discussing the company's future with our new partners, like Mrs. Maxwell. The mention of his wife struck Russell like a punch. Stephanie, what do you mean? Jonathan handed him a thick envelope. These are from her lawyers. Along with the divorce papers, you'll find a record of your financial misconduct. Russell ripped open the envelope, his face turning from red to pale as he read the documents. This is impossible. These accounts were private. Nothing's private when you misuse company funds, Jonathan said, glancing at his watch. A car is waiting to take you home. I suggest you pack up your office. Under supervision, of course. Meanwhile, Marcy King watched from her office, texting Alexander. Status, he's here. Starting to realize what he's lost. Good. Keep me updated. In the lobby, Gloria arrived in last night's clothes, mascara smeared, demanding to see Alexander. I'm sorry, Mrs. Lee, the receptionist said flatly. You've been removed from the authorized visitor list. Removed? Gloria's voice rose. I'm his wife. Not for long, a familiar voice cut in. Kate Orr stood by the security desk, now wearing a legal department badge. Gloria, don't make this worse. What are you doing here? Gloria snapped. Watching Karma, Kate replied, a cold smile on her face. All those Wednesday night dinners you needed covered? I passed every detail to Jonathan. My boyfriend found them interesting. Gloria's face drained of color. You were spying on me? She whispered, horrified. Guess Alexander noticed more than you thought, Kate said, her tone sharp. As Gloria's protests grew louder, security moved in. Russell, packing his things in the conference room, could only watch as his world collapsed. Upstairs, Alexander sat with Stephanie Hopkins Maxwell, finalizing the foundation's new funding structure. The board approved a 5-year commitment, he explained. Your educational initiatives will be fully funded, no matter what happens with the company. Stephanie signed the documents with steady hands. I should have seen this coming. He fooled a lot of people, Alexander replied, his tone neutral. The real question is, what's next? Protect what I've built, she said firmly. Russell can lose everything, but he won't take my foundation down. As their meeting continued, commotion from the lobby caught their attention. Through the glass walls, they saw Gloria being escorted out, her dignity shattered as she shouted at anyone nearby. "Hell hath no fury," Stephanie remarked. "Like a gold digger scorned," Alexander added, returning to their papers. "Now, about the new board structure." The day unfolded as a perfect storm of destruction. Russell's personal items were boxed up and shipped. His executive parking spot was reassigned. His name was removed from the company letterhead. By evening, news outlets buzzed with updates on the corporate shakeup. Social media was rife with speculation about the future of the Singapore project, while society columnists whispered about the twin divorces shaking Manhattan's elite. In his office, Alexander watched the sun set over the city. His phone buzzed nonstop. Messages from board members, employees, and reporters. But one message stood out from Gloria. "I hope you're happy. You've destroyed everything." He typed back, "No, Gloria. You did that yourself." 2 months passed, and Lee International emerged from the storm of change. The Maxwell name was gone, replaced by a sleek new logo that symbolized Alexander's successful takeover. Employees, not fearful but in awe, respected the precision with which he'd transformed the company. In his expanded corner office, Alexander reviewed the latest quarterly reports. The numbers reflected recovery and growth. Investor confidence restored, stock prices stable, and the Singapore project thriving under new management. A knock on the door interrupted his focus. Marcy King entered with a bottle of champagne. "Thought you might want to celebrate," she said, setting the bottle down. "The SEC just closed their investigation into Russell's activities." "Criminal charges?" Alexander asked, accepting the glass she offered. "Multiple counts of financial fraud. His lawyers are scrambling for a plea deal. The evidence was overwhelming." Alexander smiled faintly. "Jonathan doesn't miss a detail." Marcy continued. "Gloria's divorce was finalized this morning. Kate said she's staying with her sister in Connecticut." "Running away is all she's good at," Alexander replied, glancing out the window at the city below, his empire reflected in the glass. Marcy pulled up a news article on her tablet. "Have you seen today's Society pages?" she asked, handing it to him. The headline read, "Double Divorce Drama. Manhattan Power Couples Fall from Grace." The photo showed Russell leaving court looking years older, clutching legal papers. "Stephanie's foundation is thriving," Marcy added. "The new board position suits her." "She earned it," Alexander said, his tone genuine. "She understands what it means to build something real." His phone buzzed with an email from Jonathan. Russell's remaining assets have been seized. The once powerful man now faced jail time and a ruined reputation. "You planned this perfectly," Marcy remarked. Alexander shook his head. "It wasn't a plan. I just made sure I was prepared. That's all we can do." A comfortable silence followed as they watched the city lights flicker on. Workers filtered out of the building, their lives unaffected by the corporate drama. "Do you regret any of it?" Marcy asked, breaking the quiet. Alexander considered the question. "They made their choices. I just made sure there were consequences." His computer chimed with new projections showing Lee International's strongest performance yet. Success, it seemed, was the sweetest revenge. 2 years later, Lee International's transformation was complete. The Singapore project, once a symbol of mismanagement, was now the company's most profitable division. Investor confidence soared, and Forbes published an article, "From Betrayal to Billionaire: The Rise of Alexander Lee." Meanwhile, Gloria faded from the spotlight. Struggling to rebuild in Connecticut, her once glamorous life had become a cautionary tale. Her social media profiles vanished after relentless trolling, her fall from grace now a whispered story. She was last seen working as a real estate agent, far removed from her past. Russell fared no better. The SEC's investigation had revealed financial fraud, leading to his indictment. After a brief trial, he accepted a plea deal: 5 years in a minimum security prison, complete asset forfeiture, and a lifetime ban from any publicly traded company. In prison, Russell reportedly spent his days following Lee International's stock ticker, a daily reminder of his downfall. 5 years later, Lee International's headquarters towered above Manhattan's skyline, a symbol of Alexander's dominance. The company's rise was now a case study in corporate resilience. Inside his office, Alexander reviewed acquisition reports. Lee International's market value had tripled since Russell's fall, each success proving Alexander's belief that betrayals, when handled correctly, could become opportunities. A knock at the door revealed Jonathan Griffith, now chief legal officer, and his wife, Kate. Their marriage, celebrated 2 years ago, had marked the union of two key players in Russell and Gloria's downfall. "Thought you'd want to see this," Jonathan said, placing a newspaper on Alexander's desk. The headline read, "Former executive Russell Maxwell denied early release." 3 years down, 2 to go, Kate remarked, settling into a chair. The judge wasn't impressed by his appeal. Alexander scanned the article, noting that Russell's fall was complete. After his release, the terms of his plea deal would prevent him from rebuilding his life. "Any word on Gloria?" Alexander asked. Kate smiled. "Still hiding in Connecticut. Her sister kicked her out last year. She's working as a real estate agent now, trying to rebuild her life." Jonathan added, "Her social media is enlightening. The woman who once attended the elite charity galas now advertises suburban homes, her designer wardrobe replaced with practical suits." Alexander glanced briefly at the photo on Jonathan's screen before returning to the documents on his desk. "She tried dating an executive last year," Jonathan noted, "until he Googled her." "Your story's quite the cautionary tale in certain circles," Kate added with a smirk. Alexander's phone buzzed with an email from Marcy King, now his trusted CFO. The latest quarterly numbers exceeded projections again, a testament to her skill in untangling Russell's financial mess. "Stephanie's foundation just partnered with the Gates Foundation," Alexander said, showing a press release, "maintaining that funding was one of our smartest decisions." Stephanie Hopkins had shed the Maxwell name after her divorce and turned her humiliation into triumph. Her foundation now operated in 12 countries and thrived alongside her marriage to a respected federal judge. "Did you see Russell's latest appeal?" Jonathan asked, handing Alexander a document. "He's claiming mental distress, blaming shame and isolation for his struggles." "Prison tends to do that," Alexander replied without sympathy. The report detailed Russell's current state, assets seized, reputation destroyed, and a lifetime ban from corporate leadership. Even his former allies avoided him. "Gloria tried visiting him last year," Kate said. "He refused, blaming her for everything, claiming her demands during the affair forced him to embezzle." Alexander chuckled. They deserved each other. His intercom buzzed, reminding him of the board meeting. 5 years after the scandal, Lee International's board was unrecognizable, rebuilt with loyal and competent members who shared Alexander's vision. "One more thing," Jonathan said. "Gloria's lawyer contacted us. She's writing a memoir and wants the NDA lifted." "Absolutely not," Alexander replied firmly. "She made her choices, and she doesn't get to profit from them." After Jonathan and Kate left, Alexander stood by his office window surveying his empire. 5 years ago, he'd watched Gloria and Russell's worlds collapse. Now, his company thrived, a testament to his calculated decisions. A news alert flashed on his phone. Russell Maxwell's latest business venture files for bankruptcy. Even from prison, his attempts to rebuild had failed, thanks in part to Alexander's quiet influence, which ensured no one would work with him. Another message arrived from a private investigator. Gloria's real estate career barely covered her rent in a modest Connecticut apartment. The once glamorous socialite now struggled to rebuild her life, aging quickly without the luxury treatments she'd once relied on. Her past haunted her. Potential suitors disappeared after a simple Google search, and her notoriety had earned her a Wikipedia page as a cautionary tale. Marcy King knocked and entered, tablet in hand. "The Singapore expansion is exceeding projections," she said. "Ironic, given Russell's disaster, they're exposed everything." "Failure often lays the foundation for success," Alexander replied, gesturing for her to sit. "Stephanie's latest project is impressive," Marcy continued, showing him a presentation. "Her foundation is revolutionizing STEM education in developing countries, and the Gates partnership is just the start." Alexander nodded, thinking of how Stephanie had rebuilt her life. Her foundation and new marriage reflected resilience, a sharp contrast to Russell's downfall. "The charity gala is next month," Marcy noted. "Stephanie wants you there. It's at the Met again, where it all started falling apart for them." "The symmetry isn't lost on me," Alexander said. An email from Jonathan arrived, confirming Russell's latest appeal had been denied. The judge's remarks were harsh. Mr. Maxwell's distress stems not from remorse, but from the consequences of his actions. "Did you see his daughter's wedding announcement?" Marcy asked. Alexander had. Lauren Maxwell, Russell's only child, had married recently, with the announcement mentioning only her mother and stepfather. Russell's name and presence were notably absent, rejected even in small contributions. Lauren's focused on the foundation now, Marcy said, working with her mother to salvage something positive from her father's disgrace. Alexander glanced at the city lights and smiled faintly. Choices had consequences, and while others had fallen, he had risen higher than ever. A notification lit up Alexander's phone, an alert from his building's security. Gloria had tried to enter the lobby again, claiming she had important documents for him. Like her previous attempts, each more desperate than the last, this one ended with security escorting her out. Politely, but firmly. "Still trying," Marcy commented. "Still failing," Alexander replied. "Some lessons take longer to learn." His calendar reminder popped up, dinner with Jonathan and Kate to celebrate their second anniversary. Their relationship, formed after a betrayal, had become something real. Kate's role in exposing Gloria's infidelity had not only won Jonathan's love, but also secured her a position in Lee International's growing legal team. "The book deal rejection came through," Marcy said, opening another email. "Fourth publisher to turn down Gloria's memoir. Even with the NDA lifted, no one wants to touch a story that makes the author look so unsympathetic." Alexander smiled faintly. "Karma writes better endings than any publisher." As dusk settled in, the city lights began to sparkle, each window in the nearby towers reminding him of how far he'd come since that rainy night when he first saw the PI's photos. His empire had expanded, built stronger by the crisis that should have torn it apart. The next morning, a news alert made Alexander pause. Russell Maxwell had attempted self-destruction in his prison cell. He survived, but the incident report painted the picture of a man finally undone by his own choices. He left a note, Jonathan told him over an emergency breakfast at the corner cafe, the same booth where they'd plotted Russell's downfall 5 years ago. "Mostly rambling," Jonathan said, but he mentioned Gloria, said she was the beautiful poison that destroyed everything he'd built. Alexander stirred his coffee, recalling the ambitious partner who'd helped create Lee and Maxwell Enterprises. "Send flowers to Stephanie and Lauren," he said. "They may have divorced him, but they shouldn't hear about this from the media." "Already done," Jonathan replied, sliding a folder across the table. "There's more. Gloria's sister finally spoke to the press. Apparently Gloria's been spiraling since she lost her real estate license last month. Something about forging documents to inflate her sales numbers." "Old habits," Alexander said dryly. "She never understood that real success takes more than just appearances." Their waitress, Janet, still serving after all these years, brought their usual orders. "Saw your company's name in the papers again, Mr. Lee," she remarked. "Something about a new tech division." Alexander nodded, a rare smile crossing his face. Lee International's latest push into artificial intelligence had made headlines and drawn investor interest. The stock had surged 15 points overnight. "The Singapore office sends their quarterly reports today," Jonathan added after Janet left. "The project Russell nearly destroyed is now our most profitable division. Sometimes I wonder if he follows the company's success from his cell." "He does." Alexander pulled up an email on his phone. The prison psychiatrist had reached out via official channels. Apparently, Russell was obsessed with Lee International's stock ticker, checking it daily in the prison library. The morning light caught the silver in Alexander's hair. At 50, he'd become what Russell had only pretended to be, a real business titan, respected not for charm, but for substance. His phone lit up with a message from Marcy. "Look who's making headlines again." The link led to a small Connecticut newspaper. Gloria Edwards, the former Manhattan socialite, had been arrested for drunk driving after causing a scene at her ex-boyfriend's engagement party. The article naturally mentioned her past. It always did. "She tried to reach out to Russell's daughter last week," Jonathan added. "Lauren blocked her number and reported her for maltreatment. Apparently, Gloria thought she could convince Lauren to support her book project. The real story of what happened." "That's irony for you," Alexander mused. "She finally wants to tell the truth, but no one's interested." Their conversation was interrupted by another message, this time from Stephanie. The Foundation's new educational center would open next month. Would Alexander do the honors at the ribbon cutting? The press would love the symmetry. The man who'd saved the Foundation from her ex-husband's misconduct helping launch its greatest achievement. "Life has a way of sorting itself out," Alexander observed, typing his acceptance. Stephanie had built something real. Gloria and Russell had built only illusions. Later that evening, in his office high above Manhattan, Alexander reviewed a personal document he rarely opened, His original plan, drafted the night he'd first seen the PI's photos of Gloria and Russell. Every step had been laid out. The careful gathering of evidence, the strategic positioning of allies, the precise timing of each revelation. But the document's final page held something he'd never shared with anyone, a list of possible outcomes for all involved. He'd predicted Russell's financial collapse, Gloria's social fall, and even the likelihood of attempted comebacks and reconciliations. What he hadn't predicted was how complete their destruction would be, how thoroughly their own choices would compound the consequences he had set in motion. His intercom buzzed. "Mr. Lee, Mrs. Cornell is here. Stephanie says it's urgent." Stephanie entered his office, looking every bit the sophisticated philanthropist she'd become. Marriage to Judge Cornell had erased the last traces of the uncertain woman she'd been as Russell's wife. "I thought you should hear this from me first," she began, taking a seat. "Russell's being transferred to the prison psychiatric unit. The self-destruction attempt. It's worse than they first reported. The doctors say he's had a complete breakdown. He keeps talking about Wednesday nights and hotel rooms, about how he should have seen the signs." Alexander absorbed this silently, recalling another conversation in this office years ago when he'd promised Stephanie that her foundation would survive Russell's downfall. "Lauren asked me to tell you something else," Stephanie continued. "She's legally changing her name. She wants no connection to Russell Maxwell anymore. The foundation will be her legacy now, not his." Alexander's gaze drifted to the city lights flickering to life outside his window as day turned to night. Somewhere in Connecticut, Gloria was probably facing the consequences of her latest public meltdown. In a prison psychiatric ward, Russell Maxwell was finally confronting the true cost of his choices. And here, in the heart of the empire they tried to destroy, Alexander Lee sat with the woman who'd risen from the same ashes that had consumed them. "We all make choices," he said finally. "Some of us choose to build, others to betray. The difference is in living with the consequences." Stephanie smiled, understanding in her eyes. "You never just wanted revenge, did you? You wanted justice." "I wanted them to understand exactly what they'd thrown away," Alexander corrected. "The rest they did to themselves." As night fell over Manhattan, Alexander Lee stood at his window, master of an empire built from the ruins of betrayal. Below, the city pulsed with life, each light a reminder that endings were just beginnings in disguise. He'd lost a wife and a business partner, but gained something far more valuable. Proof that sometimes the best revenge isn't just about destroying the old, but building something stronger in its place. His phone buzzed one last time, Jonathan confirming tomorrow's board meeting. Another quarter, another success, another step forward. While others remained trapped by the consequences of their past, Alexander reflected. True power wasn't in the ability to take revenge, but in the strength to transform it into triumph. The city lights twinkled like stars, each one a testament to the empire he'd built from betrayal's ashes, while somewhere in the darkness, two people who once thought themselves clever enough to deceive him faced the long, cold reality of their choices.
My wife cheated on me with her boss and wanted an open marriage, so I took everything and disappeared. I stood in a dim corner of the ballroom, observing a couple swaying on the dance floor, their eyes fixed on each other. As her partner drew her closer, the woman's chest rose and fell, her small frame pressed against his large one. Their movements were graceful, he with the agility of an athlete, she following suit admirably. All eyes were on them, sensing a strong emotional connection, perhaps not love, but certainly more than friendship. Her honey blonde hair cascaded gently as she leaned into him, though her proximity was more a result of his firm grip than her own choice. I might have been envious of their bond if the woman weren't my wife of 11 years, now in the embrace of her boss. Instead, I felt a surge of anger and humiliation. It wasn't the first time we'd attended her company's annual awards banquet, and everyone there knew she was married to me. I noticed people searching for me, anticipating the inevitable confrontation. After 3 dances, they left the dance floor together, joining colleagues at a central table. I watched as she gazed at him with the same fervor she once reserved for me, though it had been some time since I'd seen that look. The revulsion inside me only grew. All I could think was that the eruption was imminent. The pressure was building, but I just had to hold on a little longer. I grappled with the conflict between my current feelings of fear, hatred, and resentment towards the scene unfolding before me, and the love, respect, and trust I once held for my beloved wife. It was a battle I found myself losing, despite my efforts to overcome these emotions. Now I was sinking into despair and self-pity, bowing my head in defeat. Over the past months, I had exerted immense effort to win her back and mend the fractures in our marriage. I meticulously planned date nights, attended to household chores, switched off the TV, and attempted to engage in conversation, only to have her walk away. I left flowers, heartfelt notes, and love-filled cards, only to discover them discarded in the trash. Even sending flowers to her workplace yielded no response. What more could I do but wait, I wondered to myself. Pushing these distressing thoughts aside, I made my way back to the makeshift bar nestled in the corner of the room. Standing behind Marianne, an acquaintance of my wife's from her previous workplace, I asked, striving to appear nonchalant, "Having a good time?" "I always enjoy these yearly gatherings." "Harold sure does love those free drinks," she responded. I offered a smile and nodded, lifting my empty glass. "Me too. By the way, I haven't spotted Jason's wife around. Any idea where she might be?" I hoped my anxiety didn't betray me. "She always dresses so elegantly and is delightful to converse with." "Oh, didn't Kel mention that today Jason served her with divorce papers?" "I guess she was neglecting her marital responsibilities," Marianne blurted out, her words lacking much filter as she reached a certain level of intoxication. I found her lack of restraint rather fitting. "No, I don't think so, especially since it's Friday night and all. We came straight here after I finished work, and there wasn't any time for gossiping." I didn't just stretch the truth, it was a blatant lie. "We even took the afternoon off to prepare for tonight. She had plenty of opportunity to bring it up, but she chose not to," I replied, refilling my Captain and diet and fetching a glass of white wine for Kelsey before making my way over to where she and Jason were standing. They were so engrossed in each other that they didn't notice my approach. "Kel, I brought you a glass of wine," I said, handing her the drink. She jumped slightly at the sound of my voice. "Oh, you startled me," she exclaimed, taking the glass. "Thank you, dear." The rest of us felt increasingly uneasy the longer we lingered. Most people suddenly found the tablecloth quite captivating or discovered something fascinating across the room, avoiding direct eye contact. Others stared, likely pondering my thoughts and how oblivious I appeared. A younger guy, approximately 25 years old, even flashed a grin when he noticed me eyeing the table. We locked gazes for a moment before his smile faded and he too suddenly found the tablecloth fascinating. Approaching 1 in the morning, many guests had already departed from the hotel hall heading home. However, it was evident that Kelsey wasn't quite ready to part ways with her dance partner. "We should probably head home, honey. I still need to drop off the babysitter, and we promised we wouldn't keep her past 2 tonight," I mentioned, realizing I was intruding on her time with Jason. "Sure, okay. I think it's time for us to leave. See you on Monday," she said with a smile. Relief washed over all of us as the awkwardness neared its end. "Jason, it was nice seeing you," I added, extending my hand for a shake, which he returned. He had a firm grip, evidently trying to assert his strength. Standing 3 inches taller than my 6 feet, he outweighed me by about 15 pounds, and I noticed a slight punch on my stomach, pressing a bit firmer than usual. I met his gaze, sensing deceit and self-righteousness in his eyes. Eventually, he released my hand and bid us good night. I waved to the remaining guests as we exited the room and headed to the car. We remained silent during the drive home, although Kelsey wore a radiant smile. Upon arriving home, Kelsey checked on Caitlin, our 9-year-old daughter, while I settled up with Brittany and prepared to take her home. Upon my return, I headed to the bedroom to find Kelsey already asleep in bed. After checking on Caitlin, I visited the bathroom before retiring to the spare room for the night. I knew any possibility of closeness between us was out of the question tonight. As I struggled to recall the last time we had been carnal, with my eyes closing, the ceiling was the last thing I saw before slipping into a restless sleep. Rising early on Saturday morning, I mentally went through my checklist for the day. Caitlin was already in the living room, engrossed in her shows, and I offered a slight wave from the doorway. "Have you had breakfast yet?" I inquired. "Yep," she confirmed, waving a spoon dripping with milk, splattering drops onto the carpet. "All right, settle down. Mom's still sleeping and I need to get to work in my office," I reminded her. "Got it, Dad," she replied with unnecessary volume, causing me to chuckle. Around 8:30, I dialed my lawyer's cell phone, knowing he often worked from home on Saturday mornings. "Good morning, Bill. It's Matthew Franks," I greeted. "Morning, Matt. I'm guessing this isn't a cheery call," he responded, already anticipating the nature of the conversation. "You got it. It's time to set the plan in motion. I've learned that Jason served his wife yesterday. Any word if Kelsey has consulted with a lawyer yet?" I don't think so, but I'll double check. Let's meet at the coffee shop in half an hour. Make sure to sign and date the forms with my assistant for notarized paperwork first thing Monday morning and serve her at lunch. Bill outlined the plan. Sounds good to me. See you soon, I confirmed before ending the call. Arriving early at the coffee shop, I offered a faint smile to the person behind the counter before collecting my order and settling into a cozy chair by the fireplace, lost in thought. I never imagined I'd be divorcing the one true love of my life. It's challenging to pinpoint the exact moment when you realize your comfortable life is unraveling. For me, it was triggered by a traffic ticket, one of those automatic camera checks for running a red light. When the notice arrived in the mail, I chuckled, instantly recognizing it as Kelsey's doing. She always flipped on her headlights when in a rush. I opened the envelope, deciding to silently shed tears instead of speaking. It seemed futile to confront this directly. The photo depicted Kelsey with a man's shoulder and arm visible beside her. Though his face wasn't visible, I knew who it was. Nothing seemed particularly suspicious. She could have been at lunch or a meeting. I checked the date, March 5th, and something about it bothered me. Recalling our text messages, I remembered plans to stop by Mary's after work to pick up clothes for Kate. At the time, it didn't strike me as unusual. Despite my suspicions, I dismissed them, attributing it to Mary's usual generosity. Checking the intersection on Google Maps revealed it was on the opposite end of town from Mary's residence. Still, I tried to convince myself it could be innocent. However, as I pieced together events since late November, doubts grew. Kelsey had kept a low profile, and holiday arguments became commonplace. By January, affection dwindled, and our conversations revolved around work or Caitlin. We no longer discussed our dreams, family vacations, or our future together. Since childhood, I've had a trust fund. Initially, my great-grandfather purchased undeveloped land in the Pacific Northwest, selling portions as the local town expanded. Upon his passing, I inherited proceeds from these sales, boosting the fund. Following my grandfather's passing, it grew once more. Thankfully, my family's self-sufficiency meant I never had to dip into it. The balance stabilized and even grew slightly through accrued interest. Upon my father's demise, with my mother also deceased, I inherited all family property, merging it with my trust. With our accumulated wealth, we were on the verge of settling for life. However, Kelsey and I continued to work and increase our net worth in anticipation of retirement. I obtained a prenuptial agreement to safeguard the fund. Throughout our marriage, Kelsey and I regularly updated our prenup and wills. One clause that remained unchanged was the standard divorce clause delineating asset ownership. We also included a provision for Caitlin's education in case of my passing or divorce, with specific conditions regarding the circumstances. To ensure preparedness, I maintained access to legal and accounting services. Seeking advice, I reached out to my lawyer for a referral to the best local divorce attorney, scheduling a consultation later in the week to explore my options. Given our sturdy prenup, he remained unworried about potential financial concerns. I clarified that while I wasn't ready to take drastic action yet, I sought guidance on the next steps. Well, Matt, one option is to hire a private investigator to delve into the situation and ascertain if there's cause for concern. Unfortunately, all my PIs are currently tied up with other cases. It'll be several weeks before they can prioritize yours. But I'm not keen on waiting. This is already keeping me up at night. Are there any other avenues we could explore?
There is one possibility, albeit a somewhat dubious one.
He's trying to turn over a new leaf, but he's not exactly the most trustworthy character. We affectionately refer to him as Larry the Rogue, Bill elaborated. He's a former cop who got the boot due to complaints and some shady dealings. He could get started immediately, but I'm hesitant to recommend a long-term partnership with him. Why the nickname? I inquired with a chuckle. I want to ensure everything is above board, so if we uncover anything, we're on solid legal footing if we need to proceed. That's fine. Is he legit? I understand he has a knack for obtaining evidence, such as detailed photos, videos, emails, and phone conversations that, let's say, tread the fine line of what's admissible in court. But I've heard his findings are ultimately conclusive proof of infidelity, one way or another. All right. As long as it's within legal bounds, we can settle with him for now and transition to a more reputable private investigator in a couple of weeks, I mused. Pausing, I added, do you reckon he can kick things off today? I'll give him a call and find out. I'll keep you posted. Here in the office? Sound good. I handled a stack of paperwork for both the lawyer and the dubious investigator, facilitated his connection with my accountant, and kept the retainer fee separate from my personal account to ensure Kelsey remained unaware of my actions. I didn't want to alarm her, especially if this turmoil in our marriage was just a passing phase. Meanwhile, amidst these proceedings, I endeavored to mend my relationship with my wife. Life had taught me that significant changes and out-of-character actions usually have underlying causes. Uncertain about what drove my wife's behavior and whether we were beyond reconciliation, I resolved to fulfill my husbandly duties. Taking matters into my own hands, I showered her with affection and aimed to become the epitome of a loving and supportive husband. Yet my efforts were met with rejection at every turn, signaling that we may have reached an irreversible breaking point. One Thursday afternoon, I was summoned to my lawyer's office to review the findings unearthed by the rogue investigator. I was presented with hours of footage capturing their liaison, carnal encounters, and apparent bliss as a couple, accompanied by photographs, call logs, and personal correspondence. The evidence left me both impressed and repulsed by the rogue's methods, affirming the appropriateness of his moniker. I sat there devastated. The idea of Kelsey having an affair with Jason Stanton was inconceivable to me. I could see the appeal of Jason, tall, handsome, and well-built with a promising career trajectory. Taking charge of Kelsey's department as her personal assistant about a year ago, he had ample opportunity to integrate into her life. A former college baseball star, sidelined by a shoulder injury in his senior year, Jason's achievements were impressive. But I never imagined Kelsey allowing him to wedge between us. The weight of it all was crushing. I struggled to breathe. My chest constricted, my vision blurred, and I felt lightheaded. Pushing my chair back, I leaned forward, trying to steady my breath. Inhaling and exhaling deeply, I fought to regain clarity of mind. The sense of loss and emptiness was indescribable. I had lost my confidant, my partner, my lover, and the mother of my child. In that moment, I saw no way forward. Then it worsened. He played back the recording from the day before, revealing why he had gathered us all together. "Really, do you love me?" Her voice was tinged with excitement. "Yes, my dear. You're perfect. I love you and want us to be a family." "You mean you, me, and Caitlin?" "Exactly." "What about Matt and Shannon?" "We'll divorce them. You'll have Caitlin, and we'll be happy together." A stunned silence followed as Kelsey processed the bombshell her lover had dropped. "You really love me, Kel?" "Yes, absolutely. I hadn't really considered leaving Matt." "Consider it for a moment. He can't offer you what I can. You'll be the belle of every ball, part of the elite. You'll experience places and luxuries he could only dream of." I detected the disdain in his tone, picturing the disdainful expression on his face. Losing Kate would devastate him. We're his world. I'll be a far better father than he could ever be. In a year, she won't even want to visit him. "Why do you despise him so much? What has he done to you?" Her voice held a touch of concern. Truthfully, I wondered the same. "He's not worthy of you, Kelsey. He lacks ambition, content to remain stagnant. He's just a cog enriching someone else. Did you know he's a plant manager? His facility employs 400 people, boasting the highest production and revenue per square foot." I felt a twinge of pride that Kelsey was aware, though I would have preferred this discussion in their own dining room rather than a hotel room. "He's weak, a beta without drive or ambition. Never even pursued an MBA. He's served his purpose, honey. I could easily crush him any day of the week." "Jason, don't assume you're superior to Matt. He's not weak. You don't know his backstory. He associated with rough crowds and is skilled with firearms. He nearly took a dark path but chose education. That's why he delayed college after high school." Now she seemed to boast. "He's stronger and tougher than you realize. Promise me you won't resort to violence. I don't want either of you getting hurt, Matt for Kate's sake, and you for mine." "But I'm not. I'm in love with him. I wished it were true, but you replaced him as my man, my love." She paused, pondering. "How will it work when we divorce them simultaneously?" "I need to prepare before serving Shannon. Given her mental health issues and our year-long celibacy, it shouldn't be challenging. I'll split everything 50-50. She's unlikely to object." "Okay, but you must file for Shannon before I consult a lawyer." She was resolute. It seemed she aimed to ensure her stability and not risk her comfortable life, even for her true love's sake. "Come here, woman." I motioned, requesting the recording be turned off. At this juncture, listening was unnecessary. I glanced at Bill, grappling with how to handle this. "You strike first, Matt." "But what if she changes her mind?" "They rarely do that, Mr. Franks," he remarked solemnly. "I'm afraid they've reached a point where nothing you do or say will sway them," Bill added. I observed the scoundrel closely for the first time. He appeared to be in his 30s, fit, and his suit was impeccably tailored, quite unlike my preconceptions. Respectful and seemingly insightful, I began to view him more as Larry than the scoundrel. It seemed he genuinely cared, despite being paid for his services. Would you still want her after knowing all this? Larry inquired, echoing Bill's sentiments. You're probably right, Larry, I acknowledged. Turning to Bill, give me a day or two to decide, and I'll be in touch. All right, sounds good, Matt. Shall we draft the documents now and finalize details later or halt the process if needed? Bill proposed. Yes, let's proceed that way, I agreed. Larry handed me his business card as we concluded. Here's my personal number, Mr. Franks, in case you ever need me. Please, Larry, call me Matt, I insisted. Thank you. Matt, if you decide to pursue revenge, I know some people who could assist. After all, they don't call me Larry the Dastard for nothing, he remarked with a grin. Appreciative but uncertain, I responded. Nice meeting you, Larry. I'll reach out if I need assistance, though I doubt I could go through with it against Kel. It's reassuring to know I have support if I choose that path. With a smile, Larry bid farewell and departed in his car. Throughout the weekend, I grappled with my decision, struggling to focus on anything else. It seemed Kelsey was oblivious to the gravity of the situation, having already decided our family's fate. Doubt, anger, fear, and disappointment consumed me, particularly the loss of my identity and family. Caitlin's future weighed heavily on my mind, aggravated by the thought of this arrogant man raising her. Emotions ran rampant, leaving me in a fog of confusion until Sunday morning when clarity dawned. Sitting on the back porch with a pounding headache, it dawned on me that this fate was inevitable, regardless of my resistance. I'd already lost my wife and family, now it was a matter of how and on whose terms. The saying, lead, follow, or get the hell out of the way resonated with me. I refused to step aside or follow these schemers. There was only one option left, to lead. On Monday morning, I phoned Bill. Bill, it's Matt Franks calling. Good morning, Matt. Any progress on finding a solution? Yes, I'd like you to complete all the necessary paperwork, including only the legal photos Larry obtained. Split everything evenly. I hesitated. Do you think we should sell the house? Yes. We used a low-interest loan from my trust to purchase it, so essentially we've been paying ourselves all along. We'll divide any proceeds from the sale, but I'll repay the full loan amount and the accumulated interest. Also, please allocate $200,000 from my trust to Kel as a considerate payment for her services. It might soften her stance if she knows she won't be left destitute. I'm seeking primary custody of Kate. I understand it won't be simple, but perhaps Larry can uncover some damning information about Jason that diminishes his suitability as a father figure. I've heard he was quite the fraternity standout in college. Maybe he got carried away with some of his exploits. Please have Larry investigate. I have a contingency plan for Kate if primary custody isn't granted. Draft the most generous shared custody arrangement imaginable for me. I paused to allow Bill to catch up. Additionally, I intend to file a lawsuit against Jason for alienation of love and affection. I want to involve his wife Shannon in this ordeal as well, ensuring she's fully informed of the situation within legal bounds. On that note, I'd like you to devise another infidelity divorce plan for her. I'll cover the expenses while we serve them both. In the exclusion room, it's unlikely to yield significant results. I'll also need Shannon to sign a contract with me. I can start drafting the forms, but without her consent or details, I'm unable to proceed further, Bill clarified. I see what you're aiming for. It's about stirring the pot a bit. And while we're at it, I want to sue Kelsey's employer for permitting her affair with her boss. While there may not be a moral clause in their manual, it's dubious for any company to overlook such misconduct under supervision, especially given his position as her direct superior. It's doubtful this will go far, but let's rattle the cage and see what unfolds. Understood, Matt. This will incur substantial costs upfront and potentially escalate. We're looking at extensive manpower here, and if this escalates further, I want to ensure they don't profit unjustly. As my dad used to say, engaging a lawyer is essentially negotiating the price. Bill chuckled at my sarcastic remark about lawyers, remarking, "Your dad was a wise man indeed. Remember, you're not obligated to provide her any funds from your trust. Your prenuptial agreement is rock solid." I understand, Bill, but after reflecting on it over the weekend, I've decided that if I don't leave her in financial straits, she might be more inclined to meet my terms. And truthfully, she deserves it. She put in hard work and supported me. We were both saving for our future together. I figured it might give her an edge over Jason, so she won't have to rely on him as much when she's on her own. She deserves better, but there's no way I'm giving that cheating scoundrel Jason more than he's already taken from me in life. I mean, my wife should have been enough. As I spoke, I felt a surge of anger, thinking about how Jason had seized the life that should have been mine. Despite the circumstances, I always strived to be fair in my relationships and wanted to ensure I treated Kelsey with fairness, even if she didn't reciprocate. My solace is knowing that Caitlin will understand my actions later on, when she sees how our family fell apart. Before I forget, Bill, hold off on any filings for now. I want everything prepared and ready to go, but I prefer to wait for her to make the initial move. This way, I'll have more time with Kate in our family home. I know there will come a point when I have to act, but I want to delay until the very last moment when I can't bear it any longer. Got it. We'll keep everything undated and notarized until you're ready. I work from home on Saturday morning, so feel free to call me then too. We can't file until Monday morning anyway, but I'll have someone ready to serve them as soon as the doors open. Okay, that's the plan. Goodbye for now. I retrieved Larry's business card from my pocket and dialed the number. Larry, it's Matt Franks. How's it going? I'm good, he replied. Are you ready for some dirty work? Well, kind of. But I need you to hold off until I give the green light. No problem, Matt. What's the game plan? Can we meet up? Yes, give me an hour. Sounds good, I responded. I was already waiting when he pulled into the parking lot. After grabbing some coffee and a snack, he sat across from me. I want to gather all the damning evidence, photos, videos, recordings, everything. And we need to figure out a way to anonymously send it to Shannon Stanton, perhaps through email. No problem. I know someone who operates on the dark web, Larry said, and that's it. How about posting a video on a 30th site or sending nasty messages to Kelsey's parents or coworkers? Man, he's devious, I thought. No, Kel still has to stay in town. I wouldn't want her so humiliated that she leaves town with Kate. And despite everything, I still love her, even if she doesn't love me anymore. I slid an envelope containing $5,000 in cash across the table. This should help you get started, but let me know if you need more. Larry accepted the money and glanced at me. I think $3,000 will suffice. He may be tough, but at least he's straightforward. Consider the rest as an advance. I might require your expertise later. Remember, stay on standby until I contact you. I want to catch them off guard, and I have my reasons for allowing them to make the first move. Oh, and we also need to gather information on his wife's health issues. Her medical background could impact our decisions down the line. Can you handle that? Absolutely, Larry replied. And Bill mentioned you were looking into Jason's college years. I'm hoping to uncover something useful if custody becomes a battle. Larry nodded, jotting down a few notes on his pad. After finishing our coffee and exchanging stories about his past experiences as a cop and people we might have known, we shook hands and parted ways. That was 3 months ago. My thoughts returned to the present as Bill arrived, followed shortly by his assistant and Larry. Ready to proceed? Bill inquired once we were all seated. Yes, it seems that way. Larry, do we have any indication if Kelsey has sought legal counsel? As far as I know, no, I replied. I quickly checked her email after Bill's call and didn't find anything. I'll take a closer look today, and should know by Monday morning. Larry grinned and gave me a knowing wink. And what about Jason? Any skeletons in his closet? I asked with a glimmer of hope. Well, he was under investigation during his time in the fraternity. Allegations involving date abduction medications and underage girls at parties, Larry revealed. I've received copies of everything and have already handed them over to Bill, I informed the group. Bill glanced up, confirming, I have them in case we need them for the custody hearing. Retrieving the documents we had been diligently working on for the past few months, he indicated where I needed to sign. After signing, Bill's assistant notarized them, and I turned to address the group. Larry, can you find out who Shannon Stanton has hired as her lawyer and inform Bill? Bill, if he's competent, could you share our legal file with him? What if he's not up to par? Bill inquired. Then we'll figure out a way to connect you with Shannon, but I prefer we handle it properly. Bill, can I collect the documents on Monday afternoon? I plan to hand the paperwork to Kelsey personally, first informing her of the situation, and then you can officially serve her on Tuesday. Bill nodded understandingly and conferred with his assistant about preparing the server for Tuesday. I believe we can begin reaching out to Shannon, since she'll likely be updated soon. Bill, you can share the file with Shannon's lawyer on Monday afternoon, provided it doesn't interfere with my discussion with Kelsey on Monday evening. I leaned back in my chair, exhaling deeply. Things should be fully underway by Wednesday. Matt, have you considered where Kelsey will stay on Monday night? Bill inquired suddenly. Would it be an issue for her to stay at the house for a few days? No, unless a restraining order is obtained and she consents. I wouldn't share a bed with her. Legally, it shouldn't be an issue, but it might make you uneasy. I'd worry about how a less scrupulous lawyer might exploit this information, Bill added. All right, I'll give her a week to find alternate accommodations. We're not carnal at the moment, so I don't foresee any issues. Oh, you mean sharing the same bed, but our documents grant me temporary control of the house and custody of Kate, right? Yes. until her attorney files a motion to overturn the arrangement or until we all reach a consensus. I meant actually sharing the same bed. It might give off an odd vibe, Bill explained. Don't worry, we're not sharing a bed currently. Hey Larry, what did you uncover about Shannon's health? She's been battling depression and bipolar disorder for years. Apparently, the medications have dampened her libido, so Mr. Wonderful went searching elsewhere. I'm not sure we want to know how you obtained this information, I remarked. Larry simply grinned and shook his head while Bill pretended to be shocked. Bill, does this have any relevance to our situation? I inquired. Not at the moment. It might become significant later when we address guardianship and determine living arrangements, Bill clarified. As Bill jotted down notes on his iPad, we conversed for a few more minutes before gradually concluding our strategy session and resuming our respective tasks for the day. I felt somewhat disheartened for the remainder of the weekend, weighed down by the impending responsibilities awaiting me on Monday. Kelsey remained oblivious to any changes, as expected. On Sunday, I arranged for my aunt to pick up Caitlin from school on Monday and care for her overnight, allowing me to discuss important family matters with Kelsey. They resided on a farm outside the city, and Caitlin enjoyed playing with their dogs and tending to the animals. She'd be taking Caitlin to school on Tuesday, and I've decided we'll break the news to Caitlin on Tuesday evening. I informed Caitlin about these arrangements, and while she was excited, she seemed a bit puzzled about why she had to wait until Tuesday. I simply explained that Mom and Dad needed some personal time to discuss everything. She reluctantly accepted it. I slept in the spare room again, and once more, Kelsey didn't mention it. She visibly sighed with relief when she saw me heading there before bed. As I lay there Sunday night running through my checklist and reviewing my plan, I eventually drifted off to sleep. On Monday morning, I contacted my VP of Operations and requested a week off. I also reached out to my assistant and senior production manager to provide them with any necessary details while I was away. Around 1 in the afternoon, I entered Bill's office and unexpectedly found Larry there. I noticed a stack of papers on the desk, and the bustling activity in the office indicated that everyone was occupied. Matt, we filed the paperwork at the courthouse this morning, and here are Kelsey's documents as you requested. We've arranged for the official filing at your home around 9 a.m. on Tuesday. Is that suitable? Bill inquired, handing me the envelopes. Yes, that should work. I'll try to persuade her to take the rest of the week off. I'll let you know if that changes, I responded. Great, that's settled. Bill paused momentarily to gather his thoughts before continuing. Larry found Shannon's lawyer, and he's quite competent, so I forwarded him our files, and he seemed quite eager. He might countersue for infidelity and aim for a larger share of their assets than just a 50-50 split. He assured me he won't take any action until tomorrow morning, so everything seems fine. Okay, gentlemen, are we forgetting anything? I inquired. Just a little update. It appears Kelsey has an appointment with her lawyer next week, based on her calls and emails. And Matt, please don't hesitate to reach out if you need further assistance, Larry asked cautiously, earning another sharp glance from Bill regarding the ongoing situation. Great, sounds good, I responded, hoping I wouldn't have to delve any deeper into this mess. I guess it's all in Kelsey and Jason's hands now. Leaving Bill's office, I sent a text to Kelsey. Kel, will you be home by 5:30 tonight? Why, what's going on? She replied. Nothing serious. I was a bit preoccupied over the weekend and wanted to catch up tonight. I arranged for Aunt Alex to pick up Kate and keep her overnight. I thought I'd bring dinner home. Any requests? How thoughtful. Ready. I'll have dinner ready at 5:30. I felt guilty for setting her up like this, but it had become a common occurrence for me lately. I hoped she would interpret it as me making an extra effort to be affectionate. Kelsey arrived home around 5:15 and changed while I set the table and served the food. I poured us each a glass of wine and sat at the table, waiting for her. She took a long sip from her glass as she joined me. We shared the food and engaged in light conversation, and she seemed completely unaware of what was about to unfold. What's your schedule like for the rest of the week? I inquired after we finished eating, both of us freely picking at our favorite dishes. Do you want to make plans? She asked, glancing at me sideways. No, I thought you might want to take a week off after we talk, I stated in a flat tone, trying to keep any emotion out of my voice. Why should I do that? You'll understand, Kel, I said, placing the envelope on the table in front of her. She glanced at it and then back at me, taking another sip of wine. I'm aware of Jason and your intentions to file for divorce, I stated bluntly. She coughed slightly, surprised, and stared at me with a blank expression. I could see her mind working, trying to comprehend how I found out and what action she could take to slow me down. What scam? She finally grasped, referring to the meeting with the lawyer next week and Jason's filing against Shannon. I know you're in love with him and plan to take Kate and leave me. I opened the bag and slid some photos toward her, Her eyes widened as she set her glass down and picked up the photos, scanning through them. I noticed her eyes glistening and heard her start to hiccup slightly, a sign of her emotional distress. "I'm so sorry, Matthew. I never wanted any of this to happen." "I don't know what else to say," she murmured, her gaze fixed on the table. "I understand, Kel. I've been aware of your intentions for months now. I've had time to come to terms with it to some extent. It's incredibly disappointing and painful for me," I responded solemnly. I took a moment to compose myself, attempting to control my rising anger. "The only thing I need to know is if there's something I did or didn't do that pushed you toward Jason," I pressed. "Oh God, no," she exclaimed, meeting my gaze briefly before looking away. "I think it just happened out of guilt and shame. You didn't do anything. You were a wonderful husband and father." "I just fell for him," she confessed, her voice breaking. I felt a mix of disappointment and relief. It seemed there was nothing I could do. If she had simply fallen out of love with me and chosen Jason, he had evidently taken enough time to win her over and push me out, leaving me powerless to stop it. Our marriage had reached its end, and all that remained was paperwork. I presented the terms of the divorce and handed them to her. "Here's the proposed agreement. I've already filed my application, so you won't need to do that if you agree to my terms. The main points include upholding the prenuptial agreement, meaning my trust is off the table. I'm offering to sell off our joint assets and split them equally, including the house. Since I filed first, I'm requesting full custody of Caitlin and minimal child support. Of course, you'll have a flexible visitation schedule. I'll keep her on my insurance, but you'll need to arrange for your own. You can keep your 401k and any investments from the marriage, as well as the inheritance from your mom. I don't want to take what's rightfully yours. We'll divide the investments we made together. Kate and I will remain in the house until it's sold. Additionally, I'm providing $200,000 from my trust to help you get settled. I suggest you create a prenuptial agreement to safeguard your assets if you proceed with Jason. I want to ensure you're self-sufficient, so I'm not asking for spousal support." I paused to let her process what I'd outlined. "I think I should have custody of Caitlin. She'll need her mother as she grows up," she asserted. "I wholeheartedly agree, but you can be involved through visits and calls. Frankly, I don't trust Jason with our daughter. I know he plans to win her over with gifts and charm. Since he couldn't have his own child, he wants mine. I'm already generous in letting him have you, but he won't have our daughter. I understand you'll want to discuss custody further. Let's let the lawyers handle it and try to keep it civil." I offered custody as a peace offering after seeing Kate's reaction during her discussion with Jason. He wouldn't damage her, but that's for you to decide. Separating her from her mother isn't the solution. For now, she'll stay with me until we find a better arrangement. You can stay in the master bedroom for a few nights, or a week, while you figure things out. Kelsey, my love for you hasn't wavered. I envisioned us conquering the world together, but your actions are tearing me apart and I'm at a loss. My world feels like it's crumbling, and I'm striving to handle this with fairness and kindness. I genuinely don't want to inflict the pain on you that I'm feeling. But trust me, if you escalate things or let Jason meddle, I won't hesitate to respond in kind. And dear, I have resources at my disposal that neither of you possess. My demeanor shifted, and she could sense the frustration in my voice. I can play hardball if pushed. You've seen this side of me before, so please. Let's keep this conflict at a manageable level and allow the lawyers to navigate it. I truly want to maintain civility and respect in our interactions. It's crucial for Caitlin to see us being civil. I envision both of us playing active roles in our daughter's life. I implore you, I don't want our situation to devolve into a prolonged, bitter battle. I'm available until the end of the week, and according to legal protocol, you must be formally served, which is set to happen here at the house at 9:00 a.m. I didn't want to put you in an awkward spot at work, so you may want to consider taking a few days off as well. I know it'll be tough for both of us to share the same space, but I thought perhaps we could sit down with Caitlin tomorrow night or keep her home on Wednesday to explain the situation. What are your thoughts? Kelsey had lost her appetite and appeared visibly unwell, perhaps realizing the gravity of her actions. She had no one to blame but herself. I was content and oblivious until she disrupted it all. She glanced at me, looking bewildered, and conceded. "Matt, you clearly had a plan and outmaneuvered us. I'm not sure how, but you did. I'll notify work first thing and be home until Wednesday at least. Do you think Aunt Alex can keep Caitlin tomorrow night too? Maybe we'll keep her home from school tomorrow and bring her back Wednesday morning so we can talk." My investigator, Larry, uncovered everything after I sensed something was amiss. "I'll call Aunt Alex right away. It seems like a good idea." Kelsey gave a subtle nod when I mentioned Larry. While she gathered some papers, I bid her good night and assumed she needed time alone to process. I watched as she retreated to the master bedroom, locking the door, which didn't bother me, as I had already moved most of my belongings to the spare room. I phoned my aunt, explaining the family situation, and she agreed to keep Caitlin an extra night, dropping her off Wednesday morning. I also informed Caitlin, who was puzzled but accepting. I assured her that her mom and I would explain everything on Wednesday. As I tidied up and prepared for bed, I heard Kelsey murmuring on the phone behind the closed door, followed by quiet sobs as she mourned our broken marriage. Early the next morning, I heard Kelsey downstairs getting ready for work. At precisely 9 a.m., she accepted the package, excluding the sensitive materials. Shortly after, she grabbed her belongings and left without specifying her destination, presumably to meet Jason, her lawyer, or someone else sympathetic to her plight. Later in the day, Bill called to update me that both Jason and their company had received our legal claims. Surprisingly, Shannon had also countersued Jason around the same time. Bill stressed the importance of remaining vigilant, as Jason had apparently made threats against me. Although I never anticipated Jason acting recklessly, given his gains, I took precautions. I retrieved my .45 ACP from the weapons safe, ensured it was loaded, cocked, and locked, then placed it on the chair while I watched TV. A few hours later, while standing at the sink, I spotted a black BMW pulling into my driveway, with an enraged Jason jumping out and retrieving a baseball bat from the back. Sensing danger, I hurried back to my chair, where my cell phone was, and dialed emergency. Feeling safer with the door locked, I reported to the operator that my wife's boyfriend was in the driveway with a baseball bat. As I heard a second car pull up outside, accompanied by screams and voices indicating Kelsey's presence, a high-pitched screech pierced the air. I jumped as my front door shattered from the impact, and Jason burst inside, screaming threats at the top of his lungs. With my hand on the pistol grip, I remained calm. Jason swung the bat wildly as Kelsey screamed outside, pleading with him to stop. "I took your wife, and now I will eliminate you and take your daughter too," he yelled furiously. I allowed him to advance another 5 feet before drawing my weapon. His narrowed eyes indicated poor judgment. Although his bat was raised above his head, it seemed unlikely to be effective at a distance of 25 feet. The weapon shot from the chamber was deafening. I was trained to aim for my targets 3 times, relying on instinct. The second shot followed a split second after the first. Jason slowed down, perhaps due to momentum, and stumbled. By the time the third round was fired, though I noticed movement at the door, I remained focused on my task. The bullet pierced the splintered front door, narrowly missing Kelsey's head. She escaped without injury. Jason fell to his knees before collapsing on his stomach. The area echoed with screams, and the weapon shots seemed louder than expected. Sirens wailed as responding officers approached. Unsure of the situation's severity, they placed Kelsey on her stomach and handcuffed her by the open door, her cries continuing. Shocked by the unfolding events, I finally noticed the weapon aimed at me and the officer commanding, "Stop! Drop the weapon!" Coming to my senses, I complied and followed his orders. The following 2 weeks were a whirlwind of chaos and stress. Jason was declared dead at the scene. Later, I found out through police reports and eyewitnesses that he received both my lawsuit and updated divorce papers from his wife simultaneously. It didn't take him long to figure out that the incriminating photos came from me. Kelsey stood beside him as he opened the envelope from his wife and confirmed that she too had a set of those photographs. Shortly after, they were summoned to the vice president's office where they confessed to their affair, unaware of the consequences. Realizing that my lawsuit against the company would likely fail, the management decided to terminate the managing director for engaging in an inappropriate relationship with a subordinate, which they promptly did. In Jason's eyes, I became the embodiment of evil, and he believed I deserved punishment for thwarting his plans. Grabbing one of his souvenir bats from the office, he set off for my house. Kelsey spotted him through the conference room window on the second floor and guessed his destination. She intercepted him in our driveway, attempting to calm him down before any injury was done to me. Unbeknownst to them, I had been forewarned of their arrival and was prepared. Kelsey ended up with a black eye when Jason struck her while she tried to prevent him from entering. Other than that, she sustained no further injuries but endured months of nightmares amidst police interrogations, legal proceedings, and courtroom appearances. I spoke with her briefly, but we never delved into a deep discussion about the events that transpired in our home. Kelsey was a mere shadow of her former self, having lost her husband, lover, and daughter in less than 24 hours. She never fully recovered. Kelsey remained in touch throughout the divorce proceedings and perhaps for about a month after its conclusion. Surprisingly, she never enlisted a lawyer or contested the divorce, allowing me to easily secure custody of Caitlin. However, to my surprise, she never fulfilled her part of the financial settlement. Bill held onto it for her, but eventually returned it to me a year later. She never returned to our home and instead stayed with family until she vanished. Despite a few supervised visits with Caitlin, they were often awkward or unproductive. Regardless, I ensured Caitlin was available for every scheduled visit, whether confirmed attendance or not. She showed up roughly every fourth visit. I learned that Kelsey had developed a dependency on painkillers and other prescribed medications to manage her mental well-being. By the time she disappeared, she was unemployed, isolated, and destitute. Neither Caitlin nor I nor anyone she knew had any means of contacting her, and she ceased all communication with us. We were left without a wife and mother. Eventually, we sold the house and purchased another in Caitlin's school district, striving to rebuild our lives. Both Caitlin and I sought counseling to cope with the trauma. While I attended for 6 months, I eventually had to suppress the pain and move forward. I had a daughter to care for and a life to lead. Caitlin underwent counseling for several years intermittently, largely due to her response to the divorce and Kelsey's disappearance. She grappled with numerous psychological challenges. It took me 3 years to gather my bearings enough to consider dating again. A few months later, I encountered a remarkable woman named Jo, who was compassionate and understanding regarding Caitlin's and my circumstances. Our courtship progressed much slower and longer than either of us desired, but eventually evolved into a physical relationship, leading to marriage roughly 16 months later. Jo and I nurtured Caitlin as our own daughter, but opted not to expand our family further. Over time, our lives stabilized and flourished. Our only hurdles centered around significant milestones in Caitlin's life, such as her high school and college graduations. I enlisted Larry's help multiple times in attempts to locate Kelsey, yet every lead proved fruitless. The prevailing belief was that she likely met an unfortunate demise in solitude and despair. It was a harrowing ordeal, but we persevered as best we could and moved forward. I was grateful for the opportunity to devise a strategy and enlist the right assistance to implement it effectively.
Before Alex and I were born, my parents lived modestly in a small, close-knit town. My father worked long hours as a mechanic, while my mother managed a local diner. Their life was simple, but filled with dreams of building a better future. When I was born, they were ecstatic, calling me their miracle baby after years of struggling to conceive. My early years were full of warmth and attention, but that all changed when Alex arrived 2 years later. Suddenly, the focus shifted entirely to him. My parents' relief and joy at having a second child turned into overprotection and favoritism. As a toddler, Alex's mischievous antics were laughed off, while my innocent mistakes were met with scolding. The imbalance in treatment was subtle at first, but grew more pronounced as we aged. In school, I excelled in academics and sports, often earning praise from teachers and coaches. Yet at home, those achievements were overshadowed by Alex's smallest milestones. When he joined a soccer team and scored a goal, my parents celebrated for weeks. My trophies and awards collected dust, tucked away in a forgotten corner. One summer, during a family trip to the lake, Alex broke a neighbor's paddleboard. Although I was at the other end of the dock, I was blamed for not watching out for him. That incident solidified my role as the scapegoat, a title I couldn't seem to shake. Meanwhile, Alex continued to bask in their uncritical affection. By the time I reached high school, the rift between Alex and me widened. While I worked part-time jobs to save for college, Alex received generous allowances and gifts from my parents. When I voiced my frustration, they dismissed it, saying, "You're older, you'll understand someday." But the truth was, I never felt understood. Despite it all, I kept pushing forward. I applied for scholarships, determined to escape the suffocating environment at home. When I secured a partial scholarship to college, I thought my parents would finally acknowledge my efforts. Instead, they threw a lavish party for Alex's decision to attend community college, while my accomplishment went unnoticed. That moment solidified my belief that, no matter what I did, I would always be second to Alex in their eyes. At 31 years old, I recently found myself reflecting on the life I had built, which, until not too long ago, included being engaged to my girlfriend of 5 years, Linda. Having spent years navigating a family dynamic that often left me feeling overlooked, I realized how deeply those early patterns shaped my sense of self. Despite my efforts to carve out a meaningful existence, my younger brother Alex, who is 29, has always commanded the spotlight. So Alex was the center of my parents' attention, their golden child. His missteps, no matter how serious, were excused, while I bore the brunt of accountability. Achievements that might have earned me admiration were instead eclipsed by their fixation on Alex's every minor success. Even gifts and celebrations became markers of the disparity, with Alex receiving fanfare and me left with well-meaning but hollow encouragement to be a good role model. Moreover, when Alex decided to attend community college, they even bought him a car. Meanwhile, I biked miles to work and struggled to afford school. Alex eventually dropped out, declaring that college wasn't for him, and my parents praised his self-awareness while bankrolling a series of failed ventures he pursued. Despite this toxic environment, I focused on building a stable and independent life. My accomplishments, however, were always overshadowed by exaggerated tales of Alex's so-called entrepreneurial spirit at family gatherings. I tried to maintain a relationship with him, but it was always competitive and one-sided. I met Linda through one of Alex's friends. She was everything I had ever wanted, intelligent, funny, and kind. For the first time, I felt truly appreciated. My parents, however, were critical of her, questioning why she would even date me. Strangely, Alex took a sudden interest in my life, constantly asking about Linda. I foolishly believed he genuinely cared. After dating for a year, Linda and I moved in together. We were happy and started dreaming of a future filled with love and stability. 4 years later, I proposed, and she said yes. We decided on a long engagement so we could plan the wedding we'd always envisioned. When we shared the news of our engagement, my family's reactions were underwhelming. My mom's smile was clearly forced, my dad didn't seem to care, and Alex's congratulations felt insincere. Not long after, Linda started acting differently. She was on her phone constantly and going out more often. I trusted her completely and brushed off any suspicions. A few months ago, Linda's behavior became even more erratic. She was moody and frequently unwell. I began to hope she might be pregnant, excited at the idea of starting a family. Then one night, my world fell apart. "I'm pregnant," she said, her voice shaky. "But it's not yours." Her words hit me like a truck. "What? What do you mean it's not mine?" Tears streamed down her face. "It's Alex's." I was stunned, my mind reeling. "Alex, my brother, how could you do this?" She broke down completely. "I'm so sorry. I never meant for this to happen. It just happened." "Just happened?" I said, my voice shaking with anger. "How could you betray me like this, after everything we've been through?" Through her sobs, she muttered, "I was confused, and Alex was there when you weren't. He made me feel seen." "Seen?" I spat bitterly. "I was working hard to build a future for us, sacrificing for our dreams. And you—" I paused, trembling with fury. "You turned to him, my own brother?" She nodded, barely able to look at me. "I know I've ruined everything. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I still love you." I let out a bitter laugh. "Love? Don't use that word. You've been lying to me, sneaking around with my brother, and you call that love?" "Please," she begged, stepping closer. "It wasn't supposed to happen. I was lost, and Alex said things that made me question us." "Question us?" I interrupted, my voice rising. "So you doubted me and went straight to him? The same brother who's competed with me my whole life?" Her voice quivered as she tried to explain. "Alex made me feel like I deserved more." "Stop!" I cut her off, my tone sharp and cold. "You threw away everything we had for that. I gave you my trust, my heart, and this is what you did with it?" She collapsed into sobs, reaching for me. "I was selfish, I know. I regret it every day. Please, let me fix this." "Fix it?" I replied bitterly. "You think this is something that can just be fixed? You've destroyed everything." Her cries filled the room as I stepped back. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I never wanted to hurt you. I love you. I'll do anything to make this right." But I shook my head, the pain and anger overwhelming me. "It's too late, Linda. You made your choice, and now I'm making mine. You and Alex can have each other." She dropped to her knees, sobbing uncontrollably. "Please don't leave me. I'll do whatever it takes." I stayed firm, my voice steady but cold. "You've already done enough. I can't forgive this. Not now, not ever." Her tear-streaked face looked up at me, desperate. "What are you saying?" "Don't throw me out. We can work through this." "No," I said firmly. "You lied to me, betrayed me, and broke everything we built. Pack your things and leave." Her face went pale. "After everything, you're just going to throw me out?" "Yes," I replied without hesitation. "You made your decision long ago. Now I'm making mine. Get out." Tears streaked down her face as she stood motionless, her sobs echoing through the room. Slowly, she began to gather her belongings. each movement heavy with regret. I turned my back, unable to watch. The weight of her betrayal was too much for me to bear. As she packed, my anger shifted to Alex. My hands trembled as I punched his number into my phone. It barely rang before he picked up, his tone casual, almost smug. "Hey," he greeted as if nothing had happened. "We need to talk," I said, barely keeping my voice steady. A pause, then he sighed. "Look, I don't know what this is about, but—" "Cut the act," I snapped, my words sharp and unforgiving. "I know everything, you and Linda." There was silence on the line before he replied defensively. "All right, fine. I messed up, but it was a mistake, okay? It didn't mean anything. She was drunk and—" "Don't even try to downplay this," I interrupted, gripping the phone tighter. "You knew exactly what you were doing. You knew how much she meant to me, and you did it anyway." He let out another sigh, irritation creeping into his voice. I said, "I'm sorry, all right? But maybe if you'd been a better fiancé, she wouldn't have come to me." His words hit me like a punch to the gut. My breath caught as rage surged through me. "Excuse me?" I growled, my voice cold and cutting. "You heard me," Alex shot back. "If you'd been there for her, maybe she wouldn't have needed me. She needed someone who cared." That was it. Whatever restraint I had left snapped like a dry twig. "You think you can justify this?" I yelled, my voice thick with fury. "You think you can say that after what you've done?" He hesitated before replying. "I didn't mean for this to happen." I didn't give him a chance to say more. I slammed the phone down, my chest heaving as anger consumed me. I couldn't just sit there. I needed to confront him face to face. When I arrived at my parents' house, the tension in the air was suffocating. My parents were seated at the dining table, and Alex stood near the window, shifting uneasily. His eyes met mine, a mix of guilt and defiance. My mother spoke first, her tone careful, almost rehearsed. "We need to talk. Alex told us everything, and he knows it was a mistake." "Stop!" I said, cutting her off. My voice was firm, simmering with anger. "You don't get to excuse him." Her face softened, but her allegiance to Alex was obvious. "He's your brother. People make mistakes. Family forgives." "Family?" I said, my voice rising. "What kind of family excuses betrayal like this? You've been protecting him my whole life, no matter how much he's hurt me." My father chimed in, his tone cold and dismissive. "You're being overly dramatic. He made a mistake. You need to move past it." "Move past it?" I scoffed. "He didn't just make a mistake. He slept with my fiancée. He tore apart my life." Alex finally spoke, stepping forward with a defensive tone. "She came to me, all right? She needed someone to comfort her." I glared at him, my voice low and sharp. "Don't try to spin this. You didn't comfort her. You took advantage of her, of me, of everything I trusted." He shifted uncomfortably, but his defensiveness returned. "You're just making this worse. If you can't let it go, how are we supposed to fix anything?" I stepped closer, my fists clenched at my sides. "Fix this? There's nothing to fix. You made your choice, Alex. Now I'm making mine. You're not my brother anymore." My mother gasped. I turned to her, my voice breaking under the weight of years of resentment. "You've always put him first, every time. Even now you're defending him like what he did is no big deal." "Well, I won't. Not this time." I turned back to Alex, my tone filled with disgust. "You wanted everything I had, didn't you? Well, congratulations, you got it. But you've lost me in the process. You're nothing to me now." Alex's voice faltered. "You don't mean that. It was a mistake." I laughed bitterly. "A mistake? No, Alex. A mistake is forgetting someone's birthday. What you did was deliberate, selfish, and now you get to live with the consequences." I looked back at my parents, the weight of their unwavering loyalty to Alex crushing me. "You can have him, your perfect son, but I'm done. I've spent my whole life being second to him. Not anymore." My father's expression hardened. "You're acting childish. Family sticks together, no matter what." I shook my head, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. "If this is what family is, I want no part of it. You can keep him. I'm done." Without another word, I walked out, slamming the door behind me. The cool night air hit my face, and for the first time in years, I felt a strange, hollow sense of freedom. My heart was shattered, but I knew I had finally done what I should have done long ago. I walked away. When I got home, my phone was flooded with missed calls and texts. Linda begged for forgiveness. Alex alternated between apologizing and blaming me. My parents demanded I grow up and make amends. I ignored them all. I spent days alone, replaying every moment in my mind, trying to understand where it all went wrong. I barely ate or slept, calling out of work and burning through my vacation days. But through the pain, one thing became clear. I was done letting them control my life. Months passed. I moved to a new apartment, started therapy, and began rebuilding my life. But no matter how far I distanced myself, they still found ways to intrude: texts, calls, and now unannounced visits. One Thursday, I found my mother waiting by my car, tears streaming down her face. She clutched her purse like it might solve everything. "Please," she sobbed as I approached. "You're tearing the family apart. Your father can't take this. We can't take it." I stopped, my stomach knotting. "Mom, I didn't destroy this family. I didn't ask Alex to sleep with my fiancé, and I didn't ask you to defend him." Her voice broke as she tried to reason with me. "It was a mistake. Families forgive, son. Don't you want things to go back to normal?" "No," I said firmly. "This isn't one mistake. It's a pattern, and I'm done being second best. I've tried to be part of this family, but every time I stand up for myself, I'm told I'm wrong. I won't forgive Alex, and I'm not coming back." She crumpled onto the curb, sobbing. "You're hurting us. Please, think about this." I stood there for a moment, torn between anger and sorrow. But I couldn't let guilt pull me back. "You don't get to make me feel guilty anymore," I said, my voice steady. "I need to move on, even if that means cutting ties." I walked to my car, slammed the door, and started the engine. My phone rang. It was my father. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Man up," he barked. "This is family. You've been through worse, and you're letting this tear you apart? Forgive him and move on." I gripped the steering wheel, anger bubbling to the surface. "You mean your family? The one where Alex always comes first? I'm not doing this anymore." His voice turned cold. "Then you've made your choice. Be ready to live with the consequences." I hung up, the air in the car suffocating. But I knew I couldn't go back. Later that week, a voicemail from a distant cousin awaited me. "Hey, it's Barbara. I've been talking to your mom. I know things are hard, but family's everything. Don't throw that away. Maybe it's time to forgive Alex." I called her back, my tone sharp. "Barbara, you weren't there. You don't know what happened. I'm done being guilt-tripped into forgiving people who've hurt me." She sighed. "I just thought you might want things back to how they were." "No," I said firmly. "I don't. I need to do what's best for me, even if that means leaving this all behind." Hanging up, I set my phone down. Finding peace wasn't easy, but I knew it was worth fighting for, even if it meant standing alone. Yesterday, Linda messaged me. She's keeping the baby and plans to co-parent with Alex. My parents are thrilled about becoming grandparents, conveniently ignoring all the horrible things they said about Linda when she was with me. Her message was filled with apologies and declarations of true love with Alex. She even suggested we could all become friends for the child's sake. The nerve of it made my stomach churn. I'm at my limit. Part of me wants to sever all ties and disappear, start fresh somewhere far away. Another part is consumed with anger, wanting to stay and make them understand the depth of their betrayal. I feel trapped between the two. This betrayal has consumed my life. I can't be alone with my thoughts, let alone imagine trusting someone enough to date again. I've lost friends who think I'm being unreasonable, suggesting I take the high road and reconcile with my family, as if I caused this mess. The thought of Alex and Linda raising a child together, a child that could have been mine, is unbearable. I know the baby is innocent, but its existence is a constant reminder of their betrayal. Now my parents are urging me to be part of the child's life, calling it my duty as an uncle. The very idea makes me sick. How can I look at that child and not see the embodiment of everything they've taken from me? I've taken steps to protect myself. I consulted a lawyer and initiated a restraining order against my family. I've decided to have no involvement with the child. It's not the baby's fault, but I need to prioritize my mental health. Work has been my escape. HR has been supportive, offering extra security and remote work options. I'm also considering transferring to a new city. Starting over feels daunting, but it might be the only way to rebuild. Linda admitted the affair. And the timeline confirms Alex is the father. Even if the baby were mine, I doubt I could ever separate my feelings from the betrayal. Linda's family has expressed their shock and support. They've cut ties with her and reached out to offer help. It's a small comfort in an otherwise isolating situation. This ordeal has forced me to question whether I even want a family. For now, I'm focusing on healing, one day at a time. The restraining order process has been more complicated than expected. At the hearing, my parents brought an expensive lawyer who twisted the truth, portraying me as irrational and vengeful. They claimed I was overreacting to a minor mistake. Their lawyers' polished arguments made my stomach churn, but the evidence was on my side. My lawyer presented the maltreatment texts, emails, and everything they'd done to invade my peace. The judge listened intently, weighing both sides. In the end, the judge ruled in my favor. "The restraining order is granted," she said firmly. "This behavior is unacceptable, and the order is effective immediately." Relief washed over me, but it felt hollow. My mother sobbed as though her world had ended, and my father's glare was heavy with disappointment. They looked at me as if I were the one who had betrayed them. As I left the courtroom, Alex leaned against a wall, his eyes burning with anger. He stepped toward me, his jaw tight. "This isn't over," he muttered. "You'll regret this." My lawyer stepped in before I could respond. "Back off, Alex," he said firmly. "The restraining order is in effect. Any further contact will lead to legal action." Alex sneered but backed off. "You think a piece of paper will stop me? You can't hide forever." His words stung, but I refused to engage. I walked away, knowing I had taken a step toward reclaiming my life. Even if the path forward is lonely, I won't let them drag me back into their chaos. Last week, everything hit a breaking point. I was in a crucial meeting at work when my assistant nervously entered. "Your mom is in the lobby," she whispered. "She's causing a scene." Dread filled my chest as I excused myself. The last thing I needed was my personal drama spilling into work. When I reached the lobby, I couldn't believe what I saw. My mother stood surrounded by coworkers, flipping through a photo album of baby pictures of Alex and me, telling stories about how close we once were. She was in the middle of recounting how Alex and I used to bathe together as toddlers when she noticed me. Her face lit up and she rushed over. "Oh, sweetheart, I've been looking for you," she said cheerfully. "We're planning a baby shower for Alex and Linda, and—" "I don't want to hear it," I interrupted sharply. "You need to leave now. You're trespassing, and if you don't go, I'll call the police." Her expression froze, shifting from shock to frustration. "I don't understand why you're being like this," she protested. "I'm just trying to make things right." "I don't care," I said, cutting her off again. "Leave now." Before she could argue further, security intervened. I turned away, letting them escort her out, unwilling to engage any longer. She had crossed a line, and I wasn't going to tolerate it. The rest of the day was damage control, apologizing to my employer and smoothing things over with coworkers who had been dragged into the spectacle. While most were sympathetic, I could sense the whispers and judgment. It left a bitter taste in my mouth, a reminder of how deeply my family's dysfunction had invaded my life. A few days later, I was at the gym, trying to burn off some of the lingering frustration. The rhythmic pounding of my fists on the punching bag was a small relief, but the voice behind me shattered my focus. "Still working out, huh?" Alex sneered, his tone laced with sarcasm. I turned, and there he was, standing smugly despite the restraining order. Anger surged through me. "Get lost, Alex," I said coldly. "You're not supposed to be here." He laughed loudly, drawing attention. "Oh, come on, don't be like that," he taunted, stepping closer. "You've got your precious restraining order, but guess what? I'm still hooking up with Linda." That was it. My control snapped. "Leave," I growled, my voice low and dangerous. He smirked. "What are you going to do about it? Call the cops. You think they'll believe you?" Before I could stop myself, I swung, my fist connected with his jaw, and for a split second there was silence. Then Alex lunged at me, grabbing my shirt, and we tumbled to the floor. We fought like children, fists flying. Pain flared as his punch connected with my face, and I landed one to his stomach in return. My vision blurred briefly, but I shoved him off with all my strength. "You're dead to me, Alex," I yelled, but he came at me again, grabbing my shirt. "You're nothing but a pathetic—" He spat, but I didn't let him finish. I swung again, landing a kick. By the time the gym staff intervened, we were both bruised and out of breath. A trainer held me back while another restrained Alex. The gym manager stormed over, his voice cutting through the chaos. "That's enough! If you two don't stop, I'm calling the cops! You're both banned!" Alex glared at me, his face twisted with rage, but he finally backed down. Wiping the blood from his nose, he threw me one last venomous look before storming out. I stood there trying to catch my breath as the manager turned to me. "You need to leave too," he said firmly. I grabbed my things and left, ignoring the stares and whispers from other gym-goers. None of it mattered except putting distance between myself and Alex. As I walked to my car, adrenaline still coursing through me, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't the end. Driving home, still buzzing from adrenaline, my phone rang. The number was unfamiliar, but without thinking, I picked up. "How could you?" Linda's furious voice exploded through the line. "You broke Alex's nose. He might need surgery." Her words were so absurd that I let out a bitter laugh. "Oh, my apologies," I said sarcastically. "Did I hurt your precious boyfriend? The one you cheated on me with for months? My mistake." She was silent for a moment, then spoke in a trembling voice. "This isn't about that. Alex is hurt, and the baby can feel my stress. You're being so selfish." My anger reignited. "Selfish? You're really going to lecture me about selfishness after what you've done? You've got some nerve, Linda." She started sobbing, her voice cracking. "This isn't just about us. It's about the baby. Please, try to understand." I clenched my jaw. "No! You don't get to make this about the baby. You made it about your betrayal. I'm done." Before she could respond, I hung up and blocked her number. I wasn't wasting another second on her. The fallout from the fight didn't stop there. Word spread quickly, and my phone was flooded with messages. Some friends offered support, understanding why I snapped, but others criticized me, painting me as the villain. One message from an old friend stung. "I get that you're hurt, but seriously, knocking up Alex was a step too far." Another came from someone I barely knew. "What's wrong with you? He's your brother. Are you really that angry over a mistake? You're ruining everything." The judgment was infuriating. How could they side with Alex after all he'd done? Thankfully, there were messages from people who understood. "You did what you had to do," one close friend wrote. "Don't let anyone make you feel bad for standing up for yourself. You're better off without them." Linda's parents even reached out, expressing their disgust with her behavior and offering their support. It was a small comfort, but I appreciated it. Still, the anger and guilt lingered. The image of Alex's bloodied face replayed in my mind, and I hated that I had stooped to his level. The legal aftermath only deepened the chaos. My lawyer called the next day, his tone heavy with bad news. "Alex has filed attack charges against you," he informed me. I immediately protested, my frustration spilling out. "He broke the restraining order. He provoked me." My lawyer sighed, the weariness in his voice unmistakable. "I understand your perspective, but you threw the first punch, and that complicates the situation. We'll file charges against him for violating the restraining order, but it's not going to be an easy case." A wave of frustration hit me hard. "What happens now?" I asked, feeling cornered. "You'll need to give statements to the police, document your injuries, and prepare for a drawn-out legal process," he explained grimly. "It's going to be humiliating, I'm afraid." I wish I had better news. Giving my statement to the police felt like a gut punch. Explaining how my own brother had pushed me to violence was humiliating. They were professional but detached, documenting every detail as I showed them my swollen face and bruises from the fight. Adding insult to injury, the gym manager called. "After what happened, we have to ban you both," he said apologetically. "It's policy." I swallowed my frustration. "I understand," I said, though I didn't. Losing the gym, a rare outlet for my stress, felt like another blow. Everything seemed to be slipping away, and for the first time in a long while, I wasn't sure how to move forward. Late one evening, my cousin Brenda called, her voice tinged with concern and frustration. "Hey, how are you holding up?" she asked softly. I let out a sigh. "Same as always. Just trying to get through the day. What's going on?" She hesitated. "It's about the family." My stomach tightened. "More drama?" "Yeah," she admitted with a heavy sigh. "They've been pressuring me, especially Mom and Dad, to turn against you. But I'm not doing it. I wanted you to know that." Relief swept over me. "Thanks, Brenda. That means a lot." "There's more," she said carefully. "They've been spreading rumors about you." I stiffened. "What kind of rumors?" "They're saying you're having a breakdown," she explained. "That you're jealous of Alex and Linda and can't accept their relationship. Basically, they're painting you as bitter and unstable." I laughed bitterly. Unbelievable. After everything, they still find a way to make me the villain? "Unfortunately, yeah," Brenda said. "Some people see through it, but others believe them. It's like the truth doesn't matter to them, only their version of the story." I clenched my jaw, trying to stay calm. "I'm exhausted, Brenda. I'm trying to heal and move on, but they won't let me. They've already ruined enough." "I get it," she said sympathetically. "But I'm standing by you. I won't let them smear your name without a fight." Her words lifted a small weight off my chest. "Thank you, Brenda. I don't know what I'd do without you." "You don't need to thank me," she said firmly. "I've got your back." After a pause, I said, "It's just frustrating. All I want is peace. But they keep dragging me back into their mess. I can't seem to escape it." "I know," she replied gently. "But remember, not everyone believes them. Some people see the truth, even if it doesn't feel that way." I nodded, a little more hopeful. "Thanks. I'll try to keep that in mind." Before we hung up, she added, "Take care of yourself, and call if you need anything." "I will," I said. "I'm lucky to have you in my corner." "Same here. Talk soon." After the call, I sat quietly, processing her words. It hurt knowing my own parents were tarnishing my name, but having Brenda on my side gave me some comfort. The tension at work hadn't eased since the incident with my mother and the gym fight going viral on social media. My coworkers were distant, their unease palpable. One afternoon, my manager called me into his office. Closing the door behind me, I sat down, sensing this wasn't a routine meeting. "Marvin," he began, fiddling with a pen, "I want you to know we value you and everything you bring to the team. You've been a great employee, and we see you're going through a lot." I nodded cautiously. "I appreciate that. Thank you." He sighed, clearly uncomfortable. "Given the circumstances, I think it might be best if you take some time off. A personal sabbatical. Paid, of course, until things settle down." My heart sank. Work was my only escape from the chaos in my life. "I don't know." I started hesitantly. "I'm not sure that's the best idea." "I understand," he said, his tone gentle but firm. "But you've been under a lot of stress, and honestly, you're not at your best right now. A break might help." I clenched my fists under the desk, frustration bubbling up. "I'm fine," I said through gritted teeth. "I don't need time off. I need to keep working." His sympathetic smile only fueled my irritation. Sometimes stepping back is the best way to move forward. Take the time to focus on yourself. When you're ready, we'll be here. I sighed, realizing he wasn't giving me a choice. "Fine," I said, forcing calm into my voice. "Thank you for understanding." He looked relieved. "Of course, we'll sort out the details soon." As I left, embarrassment and anger warred inside me. I grabbed my things, trying to ignore the stares and whispers that seemed louder than usual. Walking past the break room, I overheard two coworkers talking. "Did you hear?" one said, chuckling. "Alex got Marvin's fiancée pregnant. How screwed up is that?" I froze as the blood drained from my face. My first instinct was to confront them, but instead I grabbed the doorknob, yanked it hard, and slammed the door behind me. The sound echoed through the hallway, and I felt their startled stares on my back as I walked away. I didn't stop to explain or apologize, just kept moving, feeling a grim satisfaction at their shocked silence. For the first time in days, I felt a sliver of control, even as the cold weight of my reality settled back over me. It had been an exhausting day. The stress of work, the legal drama, and the relentless family chaos weighed on me. That night, I found myself doing what had become a habit, driving aimlessly. The hum of the car and the steady rhythm of the road were the only things grounding me. The cool night air blew through the open window, but I barely noticed. I didn't have a destination, but somehow I ended up outside the old apartment Linda and I had shared. I stared at the building, memories flooding back, and wondered how everything had unraveled so quickly. A buzz from my phone pulled me from my thoughts, a notification from social media. Against my better judgment, I opened it. The message was from Maria, Linda's younger sister. "Hey, I just wanted to say I'm sorry about everything. I can't believe what Linda and Alex did to you. If you ever need someone to talk to, I'm here." I stared at the message, unsure how to respond. Was this a trap? A ploy for more drama? Or was she genuinely reaching out? Maria had distanced herself from Linda when things fell apart, but her timing felt strange. I typed back, "Why are you reaching out now, after everything?" Her reply came quickly. "I know it's weird, and I get it if you don't want to talk to me, but I couldn't stay silent anymore. Linda's been telling everyone she's suffering, claiming Alex is her true love, and it's all lies. I'm disgusted by it. I don't want you to feel like you're alone. Not everyone in the family is on their side." A mix of anger and gratitude surged inside me. Could I trust her? Was this genuine? "How do I know you're not trying to mess with me like the rest of them?" I replied. "Why now?" After a pause, she responded, "I don't blame you for doubting me, but I'm not like Linda, and I'm not close to her anymore. I've seen what she and Alex are doing, and it's disgusting. They moved in together, and she's playing the sufferer to anyone who will listen. I just want you to have the truth, even if it hurts." Her words stirred something in me, a mix of vindication and renewed anger. I finally typed back, "Thanks for being honest. I don't know what this means, but at least you're not lying to me." "I never will," she promised. I exhaled deeply, started the car, and drove off. Maria's message didn't erase the pain, but it was a rare moment of truth in a sea of lies. For now, that was enough. The calm didn't last. Within days, the gym fight with Alex was all over social media. Someone, probably one of his friends, posted a detailed account on a local Facebook page. They didn't name us, but the description was specific enough that anyone who knew us could connect the dots. The comments section exploded. Some defended me, saying Alex had it coming. "He deserved it," one person wrote bluntly. Others took Alex's side, calling me unhinged and accusing me of needing professional help. One comment even suggested I should be locked up for attack. The negative comments cut deep. No matter how hard I tried to ignore them, the avalanche of judgment was overwhelming. People I hadn't spoken to in years popped up in my notifications, some offering support, others prying for details or gossip. The whispers and speculations spread like wildfire. Everyone wanted a piece of the drama, and I couldn't escape it. The betrayal, the lies, and now the public humiliation, it all felt inescapable. One night, after drinking too much to numb the frustration, I made the mistake of revisiting that viral post. The comments were even crueler this time, and as I read through each judgmental remark, my chest burned with anger. My heart pounded as I hurled my phone across the room. It hit the wall with a loud crack, the screen shattering on impact. I stared at the broken phone, the weight of everything pressing down on me. My life had become a chaotic public spectacle where everyone felt entitled to weigh in, regardless of the truth. The next day, I deactivated most of my social media accounts. The endless notifications, invasive questions, and constant judgment were suffocating. Shutting it all down felt like the only way to breathe, even though the damage was already done. My phone was shattered, and I was left grappling with the pieces of my life. Staying in this city no longer feels like an option. Everywhere I turn, there are reminders of Linda, Alex, and my family. I can't escape the humiliation or the memories. Even the thought of running into them sends a wave of anxiety through me. I've started exploring internal transfers at work. A position in the Seattle office caught my attention. At first, I hesitated. Seattle's constant rain and unfamiliarity felt daunting. But the idea of starting fresh, somewhere no one knows my story, began to feel like a lifeline. The more I think about it, the more certain I feel. A new city, a new apartment, and a chance to rebuild without the shadow of betrayal hanging over me. Leaving everything behind might be the only way forward. Meanwhile, my parents have gone silent since the restraining order was issued. I know this quiet won't last. They're likely strategizing their next move. For now, I'm savoring the rare peace. Linda, however, has been broadcasting her pregnancy all over social media. Maria, her younger sister, told me about the constant posts, ultrasound photos, baby bump updates, and gushing captions about her blessed life with Alex. Each one feels like a punch to the gut, a painful reminder of the future I thought I was building. Despite everything, part of me still hurts. I try to avoid their updates, but sometimes curiosity gets the better of me. Each post is like reopening a wound, reminding me of what I've lost. The decision to relocate became final after a particularly rough day. I had just left another frustrating meeting with my lawyer about Alex's attack charges. The case is dragging on, and the stress is suffocating. Returning home, I found an envelope in my mailbox. The handwriting on the front stopped me in my tracks. Linda's. My first instinct was to throw it away, but curiosity won. Inside was an ultrasound photo and a handwritten letter. I know things have been hard, but I wanted to share some good news. Alex and I are expecting a baby, and we're excited for this new chapter. I hope in time you'll find it in your heart to be happy for us. The baby will be lucky to have an uncle like you. Take care. I stared at the letter, anger bubbling up. Before I knew it, I unblocked Linda's number and called her. My hands shook as it rang. Hello? Her voice was calm, like nothing had happened. Listen, you selfish witch, I snapped. I just read your letter. Are you seriously trying to make me feel happy for you and Alex after everything? There was a pause before she responded softly. I know this isn't easy. Not easy, I interrupted, my voice rising. You destroyed my life, you and Alex, and now you want me to be the loving uncle to your kid? You're insane. You tore apart everything we had, and now you think I'm going to forgive and forget? You're delusional. Her voice wavered. I never wanted to hurt you. I laughed bitterly. Don't lie to yourself. You knew exactly what you were doing. You, Alex, my parents? You can all go to hell. She inhaled sharply, but I didn't let up. I'm not going to play along with your fantasy. That baby is nothing but a reminder of your betrayal. Don't contact me again. There was a long silence. I could almost hear her trying to compose herself on the other end. Finally, Linda spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. I really hoped you'd come around eventually. I shook my head, even though she couldn't see me. Well, you hoped wrong. I'm not going to be okay with this, Linda. And as for your baby, find someone else to play family man. It's not going to be me. Before she could respond, I hung up. I didn't care what else she had to say. I'd said everything I needed to. I tossed my phone onto the couch and started pacing, adrenaline still coursing through me. It wasn't my finest moment, but for the first time in months, I felt like I'd reclaimed some of my power. Later that night, I realized I couldn't keep living like this. The memories, the betrayals, the suffocating reminders of everything that had gone wrong. It was too much. I needed to leave. I needed a fresh start far away from Linda, Alex, and my family. Without hesitation, I called my supervisor. Hey, I said, trying to steady my voice. I've decided to take the transfer to Seattle. There was a brief pause before he replied, sounding relieved. Honestly, I think that's a great idea. This situation has been tough for everyone, and a fresh start might be good for you. I'll fast-track the paperwork. For the first time in a while, I felt like I was making the right choice. Thanks, I just need to get out of here. By the next morning, the transfer was official. I had 2 weeks to pack and leave. It felt overwhelming, but also like a massive weight had been lifted. Word spread quickly, and it didn't take long for my parents to show up at my apartment banging on the door. Marvin, open up! We need to talk! My mother's voice was frantic, filled with desperation. I took a deep breath and opened the door. They stood there, anger and hurt etched on their faces. What do you want? I asked, keeping my tone calm but firm. You're abandoning us, my mother said, her eyes welling with tears. You're walking away from your family. You're throwing everything away. I'm not throwing anything away, I replied coldly. I'm leaving because being around you makes me sick. My father stepped forward, his face flushed with anger. This is selfish and immature. You can't just run away from your problems. You owe it to your family to stay and work things out. Owe you? I snapped, my voice sharp. You mean the family that sided with Alex while he screwed my fiancé? The family that stabbed me in the back at every turn? You two disgust me. Turning away, I walked back toward my packed boxes, their presence suffocating. Marvin, my mother pleaded, her voice trembling. You're going to regret this. Family is everything. You'll see how much you've hurt us. I paused, then turned back to them, my voice cold and steady. Goodbye, Mother. Goodbye, Dad. Don't call me for your funeral. Before they could respond, I picked up my phone and dialed the police. I need assistance, I told the dispatcher. My parents are here violating a restraining order. Minutes later, officers arrived. My parents protested, yelling that I was their son and they were only trying to talk. He's our child! You can't just let him shut us out like this, my father shouted. The officers stayed calm and professional, escorting them to the door. As they left, my mother's voice rang out one last time. You'll regret this, Marvin. You'll see what you've done. I closed the door behind them and leaned against it, letting out a long breath. The weight on my chest felt lighter. I turned to my packed apartment and muttered, Goodbye, everything. Then I went back to packing, feeling more at peace than I had in weeks. A few days later, Alex took his shot at retaliation, not in person, but online. He posted a long, dramatic message on his social media account, dripping with self-righteousness. The post started with, Some people can't handle seeing others happy. He painted himself and Linda as a couple rising above hate and negativity, focused on their love and future together. He claimed they were embracing their new chapter with positivity and grace, while others, clearly referring to me, clung to bitterness. The comments were flooded with support. People praised them for their resilience and called them an inspiring couple. Some wrote about how they admired their ability to stay strong despite the drama. I stared at the screen, fury bubbling up inside me. He was twisting the truth, painting himself as the sufferer while making me look like the bitter, unstable one. Seeing the outpouring of support for him and Linda made me sick. Reading the comments, I felt a sting I hadn't expected. Strangers who knew nothing of the truth were blindly siding with Alex. Their support hurt more than I cared to admit, but I reminded myself it was all a facade. Alex wasn't a sufferer. He was a liar, a man who had betrayed me, destroyed my life, and fractured his own family without hesitation. Despite my anger, I forced myself to take a step back. These people didn't know the truth. They didn't understand the pain Alex had caused or the pieces of my life I was still struggling to put back together. Yet, they celebrated him like some kind of hero. It was infuriating. I took a deep breath, set my phone down, and walked away. Engaging with them wouldn't change anything. It would only pull me deeper into their false narrative. No matter how many likes or comments Alex got, I wouldn't let him drag me down. My focus had to be on rebuilding my life, not dwelling on their ignorance. They didn't know the truth, and they never would. What mattered now was moving forward, no matter what anyone else thought. Then came the unexpected, Linda's reaction. After our heated phone call, I assumed she'd continue playing the sufferer, spinning more tales to gain sympathy. But according to Maria, my words had shaken her more than I realized. Maria, who had become an unlikely ally, called me one afternoon. "Linda's a wreck," she said. "She's been crying nonstop since you called her. I don't think she expected you to lash out like that." I could hear the frustration in her voice, mixed with disbelief. "What, she didn't think I'd finally tell her how I feel?" I asked, unsure if Linda was genuinely upset or just trying to manipulate the situation. "She's not blaming you anymore," Maria said softly. "She admitted to me that what she and Alex did was awful. I don't think it really hit her until now, but she feels trapped in this mess she's created." I paused, processing Maria's words. Trapped? She and Alex chose this. They can live with the consequences. "I know," Maria replied, sounding conflicted. "But she's scared. She thought Alex would be stable, that he'd step up. Now that she's pregnant, she's realizing how reckless he is. She told me she doesn't feel secure. She doesn't know how they're going to make it work." Hearing that hit harder than I expected. Linda had spent so much time projecting confidence about her new life with Alex, but now it seemed like reality was sinking in. I always knew Alex was reckless and unreliable, but hearing Linda admit it to Maria made it clear how shaky their foundation really was. "She says she's stuck," Maria continued. "She's terrified. She keeps saying she thought Alex would step up, but now she's not sure." I felt a mix of vindication and pity. Linda had convinced herself she was in control, making the right choices. Now, faced with the reality of her decisions, it seemed like the weight of it all was crushing her. "What do you want me to say, Maria?" I asked, shaking my head. "She brought this on herself. I'm not going to be her safety net, and I'm not going to pretend we're fine." "I understand," Maria replied, "but I thought it might help to know that she's struggling. I think she's finally realizing how badly she messed up." I didn't answer right away. Part of me wanted to tell Maria that Linda deserved whatever came her way. Another part felt a strange kind of pity for her. Linda had always tried to appear strong, but now it was clear she was unraveling under the pressure. "She's done too much damage," I said finally. "I can't help her." "I get it," Maria said gently. "I just thought you'd want to know. She's not as confident as she pretends to be. She's scared about the future." After we hung up, I sat quietly, processing everything. Linda's breakdown didn't bring me any joy. It didn't undo the betrayal. But it did show me that her and Alex's life wasn't as perfect as they wanted everyone to believe. Their house of cards was starting to fall apart. My cousin Brenda came by to help me pack and, as usual, brought me up to speed on some family drama I hadn't heard. She told me my aunt, my mom's sister, had confronted my mom in a heated argument, accusing her of favoring Alex while always sidelining me. Brenda said my aunt didn't hold back, telling my mom that her years of favoritism were finally coming back to haunt her. Hearing that someone else had called them out felt oddly validating. On the legal front, my lawyer assured me the move wouldn't impact the case. "We're still pursuing charges against Alex for breaking the restraining order and his bogus attack allegations against you," he said confidently. "The judge will see through his claims, especially with his history of violating the order. Moving across the country will also demonstrate that you're not a threat, which strengthens your case." Then I left town. It felt surreal. Now, here I am in Paris, a city I once thought was only a dream. The chaos and toxic family dynamics are behind me, and I'm on the cusp of a new chapter. 3 years later, as the sun dipped low over the Seine, I stood at the altar, waiting for Elise. The chapel was small and intimate, just the way we wanted. The quiet hum of the city faded into the background as I focused on this moment. The vows we had written still echoed in my mind, but a small part of me couldn't help thinking about the empty seats where my family should have been. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a message from my mother, though I'd blocked her number. Somehow she always found a way to reach out. Without even reading it, I swiped it away. Not much longer now, Paul said, offering me a reassuring smile. He had flown in from the States to stand by me. You all right? I nodded, my voice catching. Yeah, just thinking. About your family? I let out a deep breath. I haven't heard from them in years. Not that it matters. My mom tried reaching out once after everything, saying she was sorry that they missed me and wanted to fix things, but I've heard it all before. I'm not reopening that door just to have it slammed in my face again. Paul gave me a knowing look. So, no regrets? No, I said firmly. It hurts, but it's the right decision. Elise and I are starting fresh, and I can't keep letting the past drag me back. They're not part of my life anymore. Paul grinned. Sounds like Elise has been good for you. She has, I said, smiling. She's calm, steady, and strong. The anchor I didn't know I needed. She's been with me through everything, even when I thought I didn't deserve it. She sounds amazing, Paul said. And you deserve this, man. You've been through hell. It's time for your happy ending. Just then, the chapel doors opened, and Elise walked in, radiant in her dress. As she made her way toward me, a sense of peace washed over me. The weight of everything I had left behind lifted, and for the first time I felt completely free. Months later, whispers of Linda and Alex's unraveling found their way to me. Maria, as always, kept me informed. One evening she messaged me with the latest. Linda cheated on Alex, Maria said bluntly, with some businessman she met through work. It didn't take long for her to lose interest in their life together. I wasn't surprised. She's back to her old ways? Maria sighed. Pretty much. She was never happy, just pretending to be. Now she's wrecked things again. Their rushed relationship, the lies, the betrayal, it was all bound to implode. I'd seen the cracks from the beginning. Linda had convinced herself Alex could provide stability, but it was clear she couldn't escape her own patterns. Some people never learn, I replied. Maria didn't argue. She understood I wasn't being cruel, just honest. Do you feel sorry for him at all? Maria asked after a pause. I thought for a moment. Not really. I don't wish him ill, but he made his choices. He knew who she was, and he still went after her. Yeah, Maria said. I just wish he'd seen it coming sooner. They both made their bed, I said, glancing out at the quiet street. Now they have to lie in it. Linda and Alex made their choices, and whatever comes next is on them. My focus now is on my own life, and Elise is right here with me, helping me build something genuine, something untainted by the past. That's all that matters. The anger is gone. In its place is a quiet sense of peace, a calm I've never felt before. With Elise, I found the happiness I've been searching for. Right now, we're in Thailand on our honeymoon, and every moment feels surreal. We've spent our days exploring colorful markets, relaxing on pristine beaches, and indulging in incredible food. The simple joys of this trip feel like everything I've ever needed. Looking back on everything, I can finally say I'm free. Free from the weight of the past, the toxic relationships, and the constant manipulations. Elise understands me in a way no one else ever has. She brings out the best in me, and with her I found a love that feels solid and real. She's my partner, my future, and the center of my world. My family isn't part of this journey, and they never will be. I've realized I don't need them. What matters now is the life Elise and I are building together. The love we share, the adventures we're living, and the future we're creating. Sitting here in one of the most breathtaking places I've ever been, I feel content. I've let go of everything that held me back, and for the first time in years, I'm truly happy. Happier than I ever thought possible. This is just the beginning, and I can't wait to see where the next chapter takes us.